Gentlemen, sorry to interrupt your meal, but we would need to get the proceedings started. So first of all, would you please stand for the national anthem? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If the candidates are ready to come up onto the stage, they can start making their way up here. And I'd like to introduce Peter Manuel. He's the founder of Flag Australia. He started the organisation some 5 or 6 years ago now, after being to a water meeting and finding that we were farmers no longer owned their water or could have their own water. So Peter's been fighting this now for that long, 5 or 6 years, and of course he does it all voluntary. But he's also got a backbone behind him who does concluded in that voluntary work, and that's his lovely wife Mary. So without further ado, I'd like to get Peter to come up and get the proceedings underway. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Brian. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I can't see you too well, these lights are a bit too bright. But look, I've got to thank Mary for the support that she gives me, because there's times that I'm not home, and as Brian said, it's all voluntary, and I really appreciate the support. I hate to think if I had somebody else, I probably couldn't do this. But also, Brian, the chair of Flag, I can't thank him enough. Louise, my secretary, Carl Bremner, the treasurer, because without these people, organisations like this don't flow too well. And I must admit that we never have a blue, we have good fun. But on a serious note, we are fighting a cause that we want to grow clean, healthy food here in South Australia and Australia for all of you. And I hope you that have had a meal here tonight have really enjoyed it, because I'd like to put your hands together for Craig From and his staff for putting on this event for us. It's fantastic. Yeah, I started FlagSA about 6 years ago, Food Producers Landowners Action Group South Australia, and as Brian said, to a meeting that I went to in Victor Harbour, and I listened to their jargon for about an hour and a half, and they had a pause, and there was about 150 people there, and there was 7 of these Department of Water sitting out the front. And I asked the question, who owns the rain? And it was deadly silence. I asked the question again, they wouldn't answer me. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I asked for the 3rd time, and this little fella stood up and he said, the Crown. And I said, is that a fact? I said, well, if the Crown owns the water, we own our infrastructure, we build our dams, we put in our bores, and we buy our rainwater tanks, we'll bill you for the storage of that so-called water. Another guy stood up and he said, there's a court system, mate. And I knew from that day we were in real trouble. So since then I warned people that they were going to charge us for the water that falls on our sky. And I remember ringing Leon Biner in August 2010 and told him about it, and he more or less sort of said, well, sounds like garbage. And have a look where we are today. We've now got a right to take water levy on our farms, whether we use it or not. Now you want to think about that. You imagine going on holidays. Say you were lucky enough to go on holidays for 6 months, and you get back, nobody's used your electricity or anything like that, you get a massive bill, and you've paid that electricity bill because you've used it or you haven't used it. Well, that's what we're getting charged on our farms, whether we use it or whether we don't. And I can tell you now, with what's going on in this country, we will not be growing food. And it's that serious, and I can't believe really tonight with, what we've done on 5AA, ringing Andrew Reimer and Liz McCaskill, who are here tonight. Stand up, Andrew and Liz. You know, it's worth ringing these people on a Saturday or Sunday night, because Andrew lets you have your say, doesn't always agree, but he certainly responds in the right manner, in a decent manner, and it's important that people hear stories or your concerns publicly, and we're so lucky to have 5AA, Jeremy Cordeaux in the afternoons and Leon Biner in the morning, so we can ring these people up and actually get the message out there. And Andrew, I want to thank you and Liz over the last, 5 years that I've been ringing in. Really appreciate it. Also tonight we've got Aaron Jones from The Advertiser. Thanks very much for coming along, Aaron. Is there any other media here at all? Yeah, sorry mate.
Nick Marsh.
Yeah, where are you from, Nick?
Oh, good on you, mate.
Good on you, mate. Good on you, mate. Really appreciate that. But you know, we hear things, Malcolm Turnbull recently saying it is an exciting time to be an Australian. Well, I tell you what, Malcolm, I'm sorry, it ain't an exciting time. If I look back 30 years ago, our manufacturing was booming, our industry was booming. You know, you could go anywhere and get a job. We have a look now, our country's being sold, vast amount of agricultural land being sold to overseas government investors, and that's another one, foreign investment, good for Australia. Hang on, these people are buying up our agricultural land, growing food, sending it back to their country and not paying any tax. That's foreign investment. I've been in business for many, many years, and I can tell you if I invest in something, I want to make a profit. So this is investment, their way, not our way. We've got other things like our veterans and FlagAustralia, Food Producers Landowner Action Group. Landowner is anybody with a house. And we're not just sticking up for the farmers, we're sticking up for the landowners as well, you people with a house. Because what's happening to us, the control factor, they're coming for you too, don't worry. And look what's happened to our veterans. And I'd like Alan Cricky to stand up. Alan, could you stand up please, mate? Well deserved, Alan. Alan and some good veterans, Kai Meekins, Robert Cameron, Gibbo, and a whole heap of others, Elvis, slept on the steps for 120 days, was it, Alan? 161 days on the steps of Parliament. They got 127,000 signatures. 127,000 signatures because they wanted to save the repatriation hospital. This Labor government has not listened. They have sold the Repat Hospital, and it is absolutely disgraceful to think that people that put their lives on the line for all of us, and this government has sold this repatriation hospital. And Ward 17, the post-traumatic stress department, won't be there at Door Park. These veterans need to be under the one roof and not farmed out to different hospitals. So, you know, they talk about transforming health. They haven't transformed it, they've absolutely ruined it. Have a look at our Adelaide Hospital. The roof's leaking, they can't even... Look, I could really go on a lot about that, but it's going to end up the dearest building in the world by the time it's finished. It's built on a major fault line. The whole lot is a complete debacle. Families SA, have a look what's happened there recently about the murders and suicide. And Family SA were there 2 hours before. Anything to do with safe, it doesn't mean safe, believe me. Have a look at the Safe Sex Schools Bill. What a joke that is. Exactly. I thank God I haven't got my kids going to school. I can tell you, I'd pull them out. Who wants to flame and teach a boy to tuck his penis up to make it look like a vagina? Or your little girls to strap your boobs so they don't grow? Absolutely disgraceful. This is the sort of crap that's going on in this country. And people really need to wake up, I tell you. So, look, I could go on and on and on, but believe me, us mum and dad farmers are really feeling it. We've got low flow bypasses now they want to put on our dams at our cost. Less water going into our dams, less water for our stock, less food to feed you people. Meters that we have to pay for on our dams, the rain falls freely from the sky. This government, and I can tell you now, the opposition are not doing a damn thing about it. Not a thing. Why don't they start and speak out publicly more? Because you know why? Because they're not going to change much. It's the Liberal-Labor coalition. And the good old Greens, the good old watermelons. Have a look here tonight. These Liberal, Labor, Greens have turned their back on all of us. They haven't even responded to the emails. Not one of them. Rebecca Sharkey couldn't get here tonight. There's another function on. And she has written a very, very decent email. And she's saying that she supports the farmers, whether you're a cherry grower, a pear grower, a beef cattle producer, a dairy farmer. And she knows how precious our critical need food is. And we really appreciate the email that she did send. And it's a pity she's not here tonight. But look, I won't say any more. This is a candidate tonight, so I'd like to ask those candidates to come up here. I know Steve Burgess from One Nation was a bit late, so finish your tea, Stephen, and come up a bit later. But those candidates, would you like to come up the front, because we're going to give you all 5 minutes to do a bit of a spiel and put your head on the chopping block. And before we start, we'll have Mark Aldridge. Mark Aldridge couldn't make it, so he'll be... we'll present a quick video. He's got a few words to say. But it's going to be interesting tonight, because after the 5-minute speech that the candidates do, we'll open it up for Q&A. And don't just sit there. These people want your vote. So if you want to ask a question, please grab the microphone. There'll be 2 roving microphones. Grab a microphone and voice your concerns and ask these people questions, because this election is one of the most serious elections that we've ever had in this country. Because believe me, we are going down the gurgler big time. Massive debt, massive unemployment, the amount of people that are living on the streets, our kids are being abused, pedophiles running wild, and I think it's about time for big change. So without further ado, before I introduce these candidates, we'll just play a video of Mark Aldridge and see what he's got to say.
Go for 5 minutes or longer.
Special hello to everybody from Flag Australia, to Peter Manuel for putting this event on, to everybody that's attended, and to all those that have come along to speak and put their position forward. It's a very important thing, that democracy, and one of the big problems we have in this country is that democracy has been undermined by what they call a two-party system, where those that write the electoral laws have the most to gain from structural biases. But anyway, on that note, it's very important that the people of Australia are given what they need to ensure that democracy is upheld, and to do that, the people that have chosen to represent us in Parliament must be chosen by the free will of an informed electorate. And as we well know, becoming informed about who's actually running and what they stand for is probably the hardest thing to do in Australia. And once again, I put my hat down to Flag Australia for doing that each year, and it's sad that I can't be there, and so to be recording this like a selfie, I apologise for that. I've never done that before. When it comes to voting, it's very important that we do try and vote for change, that we vote for people that we think will best represent our interests. And one of the things we will see here, we see with Flag, and we'll see with a lot of the forums, is that the major parties won't attend. On social networking, we don't see them anywhere. The reason for that simply is that they dare not speak from the heart, because they know that may cross some sort of party policy. And what that creates is an image that the political parties, the major parties are, and their candidates are actually elected to represent those political parties, and the people that determine what those political parties do in terms of political change and legislative change are people we don't necessarily vote for, which is not democratic at all. I think the big problem is, and what's different about us as independents and minor parties, is that our only job is to represent the electorate that we hopefully vote in by. The other important thing is that I think for me the word protectionism, and we used to live in a country where the politicians were elected to protect our best interests, to protect the best interests of our nation, our food, our farming, our rights, our liberties, protect our children, make sure we have a safe community, and we don't have those things, and we see them deteriorating and be taken from us. So I think protectionism is the word that I would use to describe who I am. I have a strong interest in protecting our farmers. I run markets for the farmers, as many know. I get off my arse and try and make a difference during disasters, and try and lead by example, so that if people do vote for me and they're going to entrust me with something as important as their vote, they do that because they know that I'll do the right thing for them if I was elected, and they have an idea of who I am as a person. And so this forum tonight is fantastic, because that's what it's all about, and I would so love to be there to answer questions. I've been in the political arena for nearly 20 years. I was actually still handsome and young when I entered the political arena, and you can see what it's done to me. And on that note, I really care for the community, and I think that most of the independents and minor parties that have been around a long time really feel they can make a difference. And we shouldn't fear change, we shouldn't fear embracing some change in this country. When this country was great, and the leaders that built this country to be the fine nation it once was, they were people that represented the people, and that's what we need back into politics. We need independents and minor players and people that care, and I stand for a lot of things, but I think most people know what they are. I support our farmers and production. I'm in the court soon fighting for the existence of farmers markets. I fight for free speech, which I'm in the courts again soon. And I think that we need to all, as a community, stand up. And one of the things we must do is stop blaming the politicians and take a lot of that blame on our own shoulders. We're a good people, Australians. And if we start buying Australian produce, then they won't be importing any. If we start supporting primary production, we start our industry, start protecting them, we can do that ourselves. So let's, as a community, get together, make sure that when we have this opportunity to vote, we use it wisely, and until such time as we can get change, let's be the change we'd like to see in this world. So thank you once again for everybody coming. I'd love to be there to answer questions. I've never missed the flag event, and I'm very apologise for being out of the country, but I had to help some children. I made a promise. So I'm over in Indonesia. I'll be back tomorrow, and I missed, unfortunately, that one day. So thank you for allowing this video to go up, and I wish you all the very best to the rest of the candidates there. And if the rest of the people that are watching in the audience could at least do me one favour, spread the word, to vote with your heart, and make sure that you try and bring change, because we so need it in this country. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mark. The Pauline's not here to answer some questions. But look, what we're going to do is, I'll get Steve Burgess to come up a minute, and he can start from One Nation. Louise down there, once you go on 4 minutes, Steve, she'll just ding the glass. You've got a minute to go, and keep it short, sharp and shiny and to the point. But there's one thing I'd like to say. When you're voting, it's most important that you pick an independent or minor party that doesn't want this country sold and wants to look after food production, because they are the two main issues, and our veterans have got to be looked after big time. So without any further ado, I'd like Steve Burgess to come up. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invite. My mum, she's 90, and she says to me, "Why do you want to do politics?" Without doubt, the dirtiest game you could probably go into. Sorry.
Bring it up. You're a big boy.
Sometimes.
Thanks for the stand, I'll watch the mic. That's better.
Is that better? Yeah. Sorry about that. I was just saying to you, my mum is 90 years old, and she says, "Why do you want to get into politics? It's a dirty, dirty game. And you're associating with not nice people. You're associating with children here. You just can't say who you're associating with." Now myself, I make little UTVs. I'm a mechanic by trade. I'm a former soldier. I'm one of the things out there you'll know a little bit about me. But so I sell to you guys. I sell these little UTVs, and I do the field days, and it's getting better all the time. As a young man, if I might just perhaps introduce myself a little bit, policies, everything that Peter has said is in there with One Nation somewhere. Because the fight that Peter is fighting is a fight that One Nation is fighting. And it's a fight that I personally take up. My parents were blockies. I was brought up in country Victoria. My father suffered what we would call today post-traumatic stress, and it got him as it does 20 years later. So I grew up on my own. I started working when I was 12, still going to school, because that's how I had to do things. I served as a soldier for 6 years, had a great time, developed my sense of humour. I went through life, if you'd excuse the expression it's an army expression, it's thumbing bum, winding neutral. That's where I was. Because you see, I thought that the bad guys in politics were on one side and the better guys were on the other side. I thought the government departments were there for my benefit. And then one day, I got attacked by a government department that Peter mentioned, Families SA, and they destroyed my family. My children still don't talk to each other. It cost me marriage, cost me a son. Nearly cost the business. I nearly lost it. I fought back. I cleared the injustice, but I'm still paying the price today. So what I'm saying is, if you've got a fight with a government department, I know what it feels like. If you can feel the weight of these shiny bummed, faceless bureaucrats pushing down upon you, I know what that feels like. I also know what it's like to slap them. And that's what I intend to do. I intend to get in there and I intend to fight. I don't want to sound too arrogant. I've run a small business or medium business for most of my life, and I've never been a manager that's had a closed door. I've done everything from the front counter. So I intend to be, if I'm successful in this, I intend to be someone who is the most approachable, the hardest working man you can find. And I intend to take up the little causes, and I intend to, if I don't expend everything across, if I'm elected 3 years, 6 years, whatever it might be, if I don't expend everything I've got, then I'll consider my time to be wasted. I find the concept of what is happening to farmers with the taxing rain clouds ludicrous, and it's all part of an ongoing government philosophy they have. It's not just you guys, I see it everywhere, and I intend to take them on at their own game. Thank you for your time.
Good on you, Stephen. No problems at all. Next, we have Judith Kuerschner from the Australian Motor Enthusiast Party. Gee, that's a mouthful, Judith. Hey? It's all yours.
Thank you. I suppose I would like to start by introducing myself. I'm a driver, I'm a motorcyclist, I'm a landowner and a backyard food producer. I'm a farmer's daughter, I'm a voter, and I'm a road crash widow. And that's unfortunately that last reason why I'm standing in front of you. My husband was killed in a motorcycle crash in front of my face, and I, unlike Steve, will not be able to find justice. My husband's killer has walked away without even so much as a traffic fine. So, in order to try and bring something good from something so terrible, that's why I'm here. I came across the Australian Motoring Enthusiast Party almost 3 years ago, in some of those really dark days after the crash, finding a reason why I needed to go on. What good could I possibly bring from what happened to me? And I found comfort in the values of the AMEP. Things such as a fair go for all Australians, minimising government interference in our lives, national consistency of legislation, maximising personal responsibility, freedom of association and speech. As a motorcyclist, I was being vilified by the authorities. Care for the disadvantaged. Now that, unfortunately, includes our veterans, our pensioners, and now our farmers. The best education, despite wealth. I come from an education background. Preservation of democracy, equity and justice for all, and hand-ups, not handouts. These are some of the key values of the AMEP, which I found some comfort in. The advocacy of the AMEP around national consistency particularly resonates with me when it comes to driver and rider education. Being competency-based, had that driver had a bit more training? Who knows? Had she have had a bit more awareness of other road users? Who knows? But perhaps this was where something that I could make a difference with my knowledge, with my skills and my background. National consistency of road rules. We're not going into another country when we go into another state, but it sure feels like it sometimes. Vehicle import and customisation standards from a motoring enthusiast perspective. Once again, we don't cross country boundaries when we go into another state, but sometimes it feels like it. Sensible regulation and enforcement. Perhaps maybe the over-reliance on speed cameras might be better addressed in other ways. Support for motorsport and aftermarket industries, of which most are small business, bringing in $11 million annually to our country's economy. Stopping the speed obsession through better crash data and consistent and comprehensive crash data. The definitions for what's considered a major injury don't even have consistency across states. Representative diversity is very important in the House of Review, of which that is our Senate. Our party advocates for decision-making based on our values, not party lines. Decisions that are informed and balanced through discussion with stakeholders and receiving current information. There is a range of legislation that come through the Senate, which aren't motoring policy, and I think I'm a good listener. So I would like to be able to listen to the people of South Australia. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Judith. That was very good. Now we have Wanda Marsh from the Australian Liberty Alliance. You're running for the Senate? That's correct. Good on you, Wanda. It's all yours.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm really excited to stand here today so we can sit here and we can discuss and we can talk and we can share the concerns that we have as South Australian citizens. I would really like to thank Flag Australia for allowing me to come here and to introduce myself. I've never just considered becoming a politician before. Well, from time to time, as I was growing up, you would hear decisions that the government had made and you would go, why would they do that? I think I could be a better politician than that. Well, here I am. And I have such an honour of standing here and representing Australian Liberty Alliance as a state candidate for South Australia. So why would I stand as a politician? I've been a mum, I've always worked, I've raised 3 sons, and I certainly know what it's like to have challenges in life. And some of these things have made me realise that it's really important to stand up for what is right. Australian Liberty Alliance is strong and passionate about its country. We need to build a secure and a safe nation with an inheritance that we are proud, really proud to hand over to our future generations. The Australian Liberty Alliance Party, we want to talk about the hard issues, those taboo subjects that the current government does not want to address. Political correctness, that is crippling us as a nation. Our right for freedom of speech, our rights, we can't lose these. We need the conversations that us people want to have, not the conversations that the government actually wants to talk to us about, if they do want to speak. Australian Liberty Alliance, we're not a one-party policy. We actually have 20 really solid, fantastic policies, and they're online if any of you would like to get on and have a look, or I do have a few hard copies if anybody would like one. As I said, political correctness is really, really crippling us. And we have terrorism on our own soil. We've had Australians that have died in our country. Currently we have 20, perhaps the figure might be 22 terrorists currently in jail. We have ASIO, who is also watching over 400 people of interest, and their budget is blowing out. Australian Liberty Alliance has a firm stand against Islam. The big political parties, they don't want to do nothing about this. The question we can no longer ponder is Islam compatible with democracy? Is Islam compatible with Australian laws and values? Why has Western civilisation not grasped the idea that Islam is not more something than just a private religion? Politicians, authorities, journalists, they only see Islam as a religion. Australian Liberty Alliance knows that this religion has a political ideology. This has a justice system called Sharia law. It has a financial aspect which has the halal certification and Sharia finance, and also has a military component with this jihad. Granted, not all Muslims follow these rules, but that does not change the fact that Islam violates every human rights act that we have. With Australian Liberty Alliance, we stand for a smaller and a smarter government. Our debt is spiralling out of control. We are currently borrowing money to pay back the interest on the money that we've already borrowed. I mean, that is insane. That is just so stupid. If we look at our home, can we run budgets like that? If we've got a family that is earning $1,000 a week, but they're spending $1,100 a week, that's $100 a week that we are putting on credit that is never ever getting paid. Liberty Alliance will always put Australians first. We're going to put Australian citizens first. We're going to put our farmers first, and we have a fantastic water policy that's going to double South Australia's water. We're going to look after our industry and its workers. We're going to look after our pensions and our vets. And I do know, and some of the vets here will know me, I used to come in and cook their meals for them when those guys were sitting on the steps and they were doing what was right for them to stand up, and I was so proud and honoured to support them, and we all need to keep doing the same. We need to address our education system. Australian Liberty Alliance believes every child, regardless of where you live or the amount of money that your parents have, you are entitled to the same education, whether you live in Ceduna or whether you live in Norwood. So, Australian Living Alliance has formed, and we want to talk honesty. We want to bring honesty into the government. We want to bring honesty back into Parliament. We want to bring respect back into our communities and our schools. Australian Living Alliance believes that we cannot maintain, I do beg your pardon, we want to remain passive bystanders while change and destruction is happening to our nation, our communities and our families. And I just really want to ask you all to think about Australia First on the 2nd of July and really vote with your heart, and please consider what Australia's got to lose. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Wanda. She mentioned one thing, honesty. And honesty is sadly missing in politics today, believe me. And political correctness. Political correctness should have been thrown in the garbage years ago. But anyway, we've got Kai Meekins. Kai's not running as a candidate because Lynn Grosser couldn't make it. So Kai's representing the Justice Party. This chap here is an absolute legend. He's written a book called Red Tape Rape, and you all need to read that book, I can tell you. You got, was it Rick Marshall?
Got Rick Marshall sentenced, 8 years, convicted to his house. Peter Leith, Sammy Seagull, 26 years.
Bring that up on the microphone. So I'd like you to welcome Kai Meekins, who slept on the steps of Parliament, supporting our veterans as well. And honestly, this guy is a legend, believe me.
I'd like to say thank you very much to Flag Australia for allowing me to be here and speak on Lynn Grosser's behalf of the Justice Party. Like you said, my name's Kai Meekins. I'm an ex-state ward from the institutions years and years ago. I was 6 months of age, put into state care, and the next 30 to 40 to 50 years are pretty self-explanatory. I was abused and all that sort of stuff in state care. In my words, I believe the state government had actually set up the institutional care of children as a prostitution service for those undesirables in the community, which go to many different levels on all fronts. So what I'd like to first open up on is speak on behalf of Lynn Grosser. She couldn't make it tonight because she's got a sore throat and she's very, very crook at the moment, so I'm doing my best to speak on her behalf. She's standing for Darren Hinch's party in South Australia. Her name is Lynn Grosser, and she's basically standing for justice in sentencing, and this is in particular to the sexual offenders, the public register of convicted sexual offenders, domestic violence reform, equality, animal rights, voluntary euthanasia, and bail reform, such as the Marsh case in Victoria. There's a whole range of cases all across Australia where people have been allowed out on parole, which should have never been out on parole, and that explains that. And basically, furthermore, there is no openness in government, there is no accountability, there is no transparency, and that's why I'm standing here tonight to actually stand up on behalf of Lynn Grosser to air my opinions and hers as well. Firstly, I'd like to start off by giving you a few stats. In South Australia, we have 1,867 total sex offenders in the community registered. 330 of those are in custody. 1,537 are in the community. 917 of those sexual offenders are serious, registrable offenders. And that was on 10 Eyewitness News on the 30th of May 2016, first 5. Now, as an ex-state ward and who was abused and kidnapped by Rick Marshall, I got him sentenced to 8 years, confined to his house, and that was 40 years later I brought this man to account with the help of Graham Archer on Today Tonight and the Takeaway Children. And furthermore, I also got Sammy Seagull, his name's Peter Leith, who changed to Peter Marshall. He copped 26 years in Adelaide Jail. Last but never the least was Grant Weston, who was a taxi driver that used to pick up the kids from the institutions for the family. I jailed him for 6 years. Now, there is also, on other matters, Under the Federal Government Consolidated Law Act and the Crimes Act in the year 1914, under Section 28, any interference or hindrance of any kind with the political liberty of any individual faces by federal law a 3-year jail term. Did we know this? No. Now you do. So I'll just run that past you again. In the year 1914, under the Federal Government Consolidated Law Act, Commonwealth, in the year 1914, Section 28 of the Crimes Act. Therefore, if any politician or anybody in the community interferes or hinders anyone of any type or kind with the political liberties, which is freedom of speech, which the diggers fought hard for many, many years ago, they will face 3 years in jail. So these are some of the stats to do with all the convicted sexual offenders out there in the community. Personally, I believe they need to be jailed for life. You offend once, you go to jail for the term of your natural life. Secondly, I would like to say, any sexual offender does not get bail. You go straight to jail with no bail. Thirdly, I'd like to say that once you've been convicted and sentenced, you don't ever get released on any parole ever, period. Now, on a couple of other matters, I'd just like to say, have we heard anything from current politicians in the federal government, Liberal, Labor, Greens, Spinky, Spanky, whoever it is, to ensure a stronger economy? No. To ensure future employment? To ensure malfeasance, which is corruption, whilst you know about it, and that's what government malfeasance is. Has anyone said that they're going to ensure accountability for all this malfeasance? No. Has anyone said they're going to do bail reform? No. Parole reform? No. Reform the inconsistencies in sentencing of these demons? No. There is no public register, so every single person in the community will know exactly where these people are, so we can deter our children to keep away from these people, knowing where they are. We need to also, has any of these politicians ever said they're going to reform the inept child protection system with employment screening tests, which Mr McCool actually aced all of the tests. Hence, therefore, the McCool case, hence, therefore, in the recent 24-hour ago headlines. It is a very sad, dark chapter in South Australia's history. Has anyone in South Australia or federally initiated a Bill of Human Rights? Has any federal politician stood up and said they're willing to abolish the rainfall tax for our farmers? I don't think so. Has anyone said they're going to initiate annual performance public service contracts? So at the end of the 12-month period, you don't do your job, you're bloody out. Has any federal politician, Liberal, Labor, Greens or hanky-spanky, has any of those ever said that they're going to freeze political wages? No. Are they basically going to abolish the free trade agreement, which therefore has turned their back on all Australian farmers and produce? No. Has anyone said they're going to save the healthcare system in totality? No. Is anyone going to fix the roads and all the bottlenecks? No. Well, I'll leave you with this. This South Australian government and the federal government leaves a hell of a lot yet to be desired. So when you do vote, don't vote Liberal, don't vote Labor, don't vote the Greens, vote for your independents, because that is where you know they will stand. Thank you.
I'll tell you what, Kai, the man that you've turned out, I don't know how you've done it, mate, it's a credit to you, it really is. Next we've got John Hahn, Shooters and Fishers and Farmers Party. Do you like that farmer bit? Good on you, mate.
Hello, and thanks for Flag for allowing us, for putting on this event for the independent and smaller parties of SA. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm John Hahn, coming to Hanhdorf, which is an apt place. I'm a fifth-generation vigneron and farmer in the Barossa Valley, and growing grapes as an independent for wineries. Worked on the farm, and it certainly set my values, and my outlook on life. But at a certain point I came down to the city, studied for an economics degree, and also later a CPA in governance, corporate governance qualifications. Ended up working in London and Adelaide, and came back to Australia to work for a winery, and ended up as a general manager, finance and administration of the winery, before returning back to the family farm to take it over when my parents retired. Wanting to put back into the community, I was one of the founding directors of the Barossa Grape and Wine Association, which was a successful collaboration between winemakers and growers to value add and market Barossa grapes, and it's been a very successful partnership. And was also the founding chairman of Grape Barossa, which represented independent grape growers in the region. Later on I served on the state and an alternate on the board of the national and state and national grower bodies. I represent Primary Producers SA, with the Shooters I represent Primary Producers SA on firearms legislation and regulation matters, and I've been promoted to the farming community in SA as a person to come to for those issues. And I want to present myself for consideration as a senator to you, to serve the community in SA, particularly rural regions, shooters, fishers and other people, to deliver fairer outcomes, a better go for Australians, and common sense reforms, especially in the face of green tape and bureaucracy. Farmers, shooters, fishers and many other people need people in Parliament that, with this attitude. Now I'd like to detail some policies of the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, particularly on agricultural and land issues. We're the only party in Australia that actually includes farmers in our name, which shows our commitment to the area. Farmers are the natural environmental stewards of the land. It's natural for a farmer to continue his business in a sustainable way, because it's for the longevity of the business. And farmers need this to be recognised, not restricted, taxed, regulated, ad nauseum. Water security is a particular issue for a lot of water security is a particular issue for almost all farmers. We're in a drought situation again, though it did rain today, which was good to see. And as a nation, we need to invest more in infrastructure, make it easier for farmers to do so, and also to conserve water, reduce red tape, and especially green tape. From my personal experience, I know the environment is often put as a number one, urban development is number two, and farming issues very much the residual. And not allow farm levies to become cash tax grabs, which is ridiculous. I mean, the Murray water allocations are only 36% at the moment. Imagine if you're at a factory and you got told you can have 36% electricity next year and you have to continue on your business. This sort of action, must be accompanied by long-term strategies to try and, improve the situation. Not just, every year cutting back allocations. No. Market power is a particular area that affects agricultural products. We know the retail concentration of power. There's also vertical integration, where some businesses own the farm, the factory and then the supermarkets, and own a lot of them. This affects returns to agriculture. Animal rights is a particular issue in Australia, and it'll become more and more a problem, especially for the farming areas. And the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party will table a bill to outlaw animal liberation hate campaigns, and especially terrorist type actions. Ageing populations of farmers are a problem. We need to revitalise the industry. We support the expansion of the sustainable live export trade. Regional communications in Australia are often third world standard. That has to be improved. Right to farm issues, there's a lot of those that we would support. On the shooters' part, firearms, virtually all farmers are gun owners, and 40% of gun owners are actually farmers. And the emphasis there is continually on the law-abiding sector, not on criminal activity, illegal ownership, where police resources really need to be concentrated. Obviously, we've got a lot of other policies. If people want to talk to me about them, please feel free. Thank you.
Thanks very much, John. Yeah, you mentioned that word green tape. Green tape is absolutely killing us, it really is. And, we need these independent minor parties to start talking that meters, if they've got the balance of power, are gone. Low flow bypasses are gone, and we need to put more dams in this country, and in drier areas we need bigger dams so when it does rain we can capture that water so we can drought proof our properties. Last year Ian Hunter, the Minister for Conservation and Water, with a flick of a pen in the Eastern Mount Lofty Ranges, the Angus Bremer catchment, no more dams. No more dams. I bought a property in that area, and that now the goalposts have been changed. So I can't even drought-proof my property, and it is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm sick and tired of this so-called Natural Resource Management Board. I can tell you, natural resource management centres opening up all over this state, costing this state, producing not a damn thing. They need to go. Next we've got Bob Traeger from the Citizens Electoral Council of Australia. Good on you, Bob. Your turn.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting the Citizens Electoral Council here tonight. Alex Kozlow couldn't make it tonight as he's very busy as a clinical psychologist, and he's got to meet deadlines, and he works till 4 o'clock in the morning doing these things, so he's a very busy guy. He gives his apologies to everybody. However, he asked me if I'd like to say something, which I will. Why should we vote for CEC, Citizens Electoral Council? In this election there's two issues override all others, which the CEC alone is addressing. The deepening economic crisis in Australia, which includes farms and our rain and our everything that's being taken overseas, and the rest of the world as well, the crisis, and the danger of Australia being drawn into war with China and Russia. Now, we are aware there's a threat of World War III, the way they're playing, but we're losing our productive industries such as car and steel manufacturers. We're losing our farms. The real unemployment is at least 11%, and the banking system bubble faces a huge inevitable crash. So one of the items we're talking about is no bail-in. Bail-in is where the banks can grab your deposits and superannuation. It's happened overseas in Cyprus and Greece, etc., and it is now legal in USA and New Zealand and also USA. And APRA tell us, the controllers of the bank, said in 2014 at a financial inquiry, yes, they have the power to do it anyway. So that's a huge threat that hangs over savers and superannuation of retirees, because Australian banks are up to over $32.3 trillion in derivatives and counting as of 2015, according to the Reserve Bank of Australia. And all you know what happened in the great financial crisis, they went belly up and a lot of banks failed and people lost their bickies. It's happened in other countries as well. So that's legal now in those countries. And so we've been fighting for 28 years to bring in this bail-in. No wonder the Libs and Labor and Greens don't like us. The bank separation is another thing. We need to have Glass-Steagall Act. Glass-Steagall separates your normal, boring, everyday banking from the Paul Keating called it the casino, the derivatives, the insurance companies, and all those. Now, a lot of the off-balance sheet companies have that $32.3 trillion sitting there. And so if they go belly up, you look out for your deposits. It can happen here, APRA said so. Now, we need to separate those banks, and so that we don't go down the corruption line. That when in 1999 it was reappealed in USA. They had the law from 1933 to 1999, and the corruptly reappealed, such that then 9 years later the GFC happened. It's a frightening thought, isn't it? We need to establish a government-owned national bank like the old Commonwealth Bank used to be, so we can fund our own infrastructure here. We don't have to borrow money from overseas, we can fund it. Goodness me, China's done it, other countries are doing it. Why can't we, such that we're not relying upon all these other bankers and, well, sorry Mr Turnbull, and so that we can have our own infrastructure here. We need dams, we need hydropower, we can use dams, we've got plenty of water here, why don't we use it? There's plenty of irrigation plans I've seen over the last, 50 years, Professor Indersby, the Bradfield scheme, there's a whole bunch of them. We could have maglev rail, which is fast rail between cities. Why not? That would be funded by this national bank. Well, I don't like to call it national bank, that smells, doesn't it? But a Commonwealth, not even that. But an Australian Development Bank might sound good. We need to watch this tax speculation as well. Tax to speculation. There's more than $132 trillion per year spent on derivatives, etc., and bonds and derivatives. Why not say $1 for every 1,000 that's speculated? So therefore, that would raise about $130 billion anyhow. We need this good bank to create an economic science driver program so we can have our science, etc. We can have schools, we can have hospitals, we can have repat places for our people. We need to shift Australia's strategic policy to align with the BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa holding hands together for peace, not wanting regime change. We don't want to be involved anymore as lackeys for UK and USA. Going into Iraq and Libya and Syria, these places causing problems. We don't want to do that anymore. We've had a gutful, haven't we? We don't want to be spending all this money going overseas. Goodness me. And don't talk about DCNS and the deal with Malaysia. That's a law case. And development for peace and not alliance with war. That's what we want. We don't want alliances for war. We need to align ourselves with BRICS. We need this fast rail. We need to join the Silk Road that goes across the globe. That's what the BRICS are developing. A lot of countries want to join it, but you wait and see. There's problems causing problems with the BRICS now because the UK and USA are causing insurgencies in those countries, and they want to take over the normal, the elected people that are in power. So please vote for CEC. We're trying our guts out.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bob. It's amazing, isn't it? Last global financial crisis, we, the taxpayer, bailed the banks out in the tune of $880 billion, and the next one they want to take our savings. Put your savings under the bed. Now we've got Michael Noack from the Liberal Democrat Party. Good on you, Michael.
Hey everyone. So I heard someone talk about politicians' wages before. There was one person in federal parliament calling for a 10% cut, and that was Liberal Democrat Senator David Leyonhjelm. He's calling for a 10% cut across the board as part of our plan to balance the budget in 1 year. Of course, we've got politicians year after year calling for more and more debt, and the Liberal Party had a great ad out calling out the Labor Party for saying we're going to have a surplus, then the year after we're going to have a deficit. It was part of their campaign ad. And then we took it and we made it part of our ad. We had Joe Hockey saying we're going to have this much debt, and then the next year Scott Morrison comes out, we're going to have a bigger debt. So we used against them, and now they were attacking us for it. They were saying we're using illegal footage. You can't have footage of Parliament. Talk about transparency. We can't even have footage of our own politicians in advertisements, even though this was the ad we stole from them. So can I have a show of hands? Who thinks the government knows how to run their lives better than they do? Sorry, the light's getting there. I think that's zero. Who thinks the government knows how to spend their tax dollars better than if they had those tax dollars themselves? There we go, we've got a few. I thought there'd be a few. That's really the crux of what the Liberal Democrats are about. We're a party of choice. We think that, generally speaking, if you live your life and you're not harming others, then you should be free to live your life. You should be free to, if you earn money, you should be able to spend your money. We shouldn't have excessive taxation where the government takes half your income, taxes you here, there, everywhere, and then they often spend on things we don't like. Let's be honest, the reason why most of us are in politics is because the government is doing things we don't like. It's so bad that we have to waste our own time getting involved to fix this system. So that's the basic principle of the Liberal Democrats, the freedom to live your life as long as you don't harm others. And that basic principle can probably guess what all of our policies are. So a bit more about Senator David Leyonhjelm. He's a vet, and he's also been an agricultural consultant for well before he was in Parliament. He's not a career politician. He's only been in there 3 years. He used to write a column for an online thing called AgriBuzz for many years. He's been the champion for agricultural levy reform, In other words, putting farmers who pay these required levies a chance to have some transparency in the organisations that are run. Because the Liberal Democrats are all for lots of transparency, and as we know, the governments don't like to be transparent. Also, the Liberal Democrats were one of the highest voted parties in 2013. We got around 3.5%. If you put that in comparison, Bob Day got just more votes than us and he got elected to the Senate. So we're a real threat to the Liberal Party and they know it. We're peeling off their voters and we're peeling off a lot of their members and donors at the moment. No wonder they're attacking us. And this is important. We've got a lot of great candidates here. And we've got a lot of people that do vote minor party. It's 1 in 4 people. That's why we've had the reforms to get rid of all of us. And it's really important that when you vote, whoever you vote for on this stage or off this stage, that you put your 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you can go up to 20, that would be fantastic, and leave the majors off the end. And this is the principle in terms of government waste. We have a thing called opium. It's not a drug, it's OPM, other people's money. And politicians love opium. Because when you think there's 4 ways to spend money, right? If you spend money on yourself, it's spent quite well. It's your money and you know what you want, so you generally get something good. If you go and buy a present for someone you know, you're pretty careful with your money, it's your money, and you maybe don't get the best thing, but you perhaps know them. Now, if you're spending someone else's money on something for yourself, you tend to get a bit wasteful, it's not your money. And then the worst type of spending we have is when you take other people's money and spend it on other people. That's the worst of all worlds, and that's every bit of spending that's done in Canberra. They take other people's money and they spend it on other people. There's absolute waste in such a system. So the Liberal Democrats stand for a smaller government, a government where people are free to make their own choices, provided they don't harm others, and a government that taxes and spends a lot less. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael. Said quite a few good things there. There's one thing that you all need to know too. In 2007, with this water business, John Howard, I think he's coming soon, I think, they'll help Jamie out. I think he might, yeah?
He's here.
Oh, right. Oh, good on him.
Who's got a gun?
I think Jamie's over here. He's the little pig, I think. He needs all the help he can get. And also Bob Day didn't respond to our emails either, which was very, very disappointing from Family First. I can't believe that. But with this water business in 2007, the National Water Initiative, John Howard separated water from land. And Malcolm Turnbull was the Minister for Water. They made water a tradable commodity. So this water allocation plan, it's not about our precious resource water. It's not about us farmers not managing our water properly. It's so they can sell our water that they've stolen off us and made it a tradable commodity, and they are making billions. Over $50 billion worth of our water rights have been sold to overseas investors, and we have been cut back. Agriculture is the biggest money earner in this country. $155 billion a year it's put into the Australian economy. Manufacturing, $100 billion. And mining is third, 80. So why in the hell is this Liberal government, Labor will do it too, and so will the Greens, why in the hell are they selling our cash cow? Gee, I tell you what, it's a great time to be an Australian. We're going to open this up for Q&A now. So just before we do, just put your hands together for these people that have put their... Believe me, it's not easy getting up here, and I hate it, I really do. But it's not easy getting up here and facing the music. They don't know what's going to be thrown at them or anything like that. Go easy on them, be respectful, and it's up to you people out there. Where's those microphones, Brian and Carl?
Got one here. Righto, Carl.
Brian, just put your hands up if you've got a question. Brian, over here, Jenny's got her hand up here, she'll go for it. Good on you.
Burgess, would you move your chair in a bit so we can see you?
Oh, sorry. I can answer that one.
Go for it, Jenny.
No, that was a question. No.
That was a question. You surely got better than that. Oh, I get cat, but I know. Alex?
can tell you that London Marsh is at RH.
Alex, who would you like to?
Hello.
Who would you like to fire the question in?
Can I say a couple of things first?
Yep.
I just want to put in an apology for Bob Cooch from Stop Population Growth Now. He would have loved to be here, but he's very, very sick in bed at the moment.
No worries at all.
So,
Get better, Bob.
Stop Population Growth Now is affiliated with Sustainable Population Australia. I just want to say that I emailed the Courier, the Mount Barker Courier, to try and get a reporter here, but clearly there isn't one here, which is extremely disappointing. I don't know how many people saw the letter in last week's Courier about Jamie Briggs and all his honesty and integrity, but I would strongly ask everyone in Mayo who read that letter from a Mrs. Flack to send an email to the editor of the Courier, which is letters@courier.net.au, and just tell them what they think about that letter. Something interesting I saw today, which I felt was extremely undignified and disrespectful. I drove past Nick Xenophon's legal practice today on Lower North East Road, and right outside his office is a Christopher Pine core flute, which has been strategically placed above Nick Xenophon's core flute, pretty much outside his front door.
Have you got a couple of questions?
Yeah, sorry. Now, just one thing, it's probably not a question, but I have to say to John from the Shooters and Fishers, I've listened to everybody and I agree with everything you've said, and I think you're all marvellous. You would make wonderful politicians, but there's just one thing I don't agree with, and I think that people who find out about gross abuse of animals on family or factory farms, not family farms, factory farms, I think we have a right to know about that. And I don't really think that you could call people that find those things out by whatever means a terrorist.
Yep, no problems at all.
There's two aspects to that. One aspect is there's a vast difference between animal welfare and animal rights. Abuse of animals in whatever farming practice or other practice is an animal welfare issue. Animal rights is about making animals, giving them human rights and so on. And with regard to illegal acts, there is mechanisms to investigate such practices without breaking and entering into a property, or in some cases misrepresenting what's actually being done there. So, my main comment is there's a big difference between animal welfare, which almost everyone agrees with, and animal rights, which is a far off topic in a lot of people's view.
But you must agree that there's been some really gross abuse discovered on factory farms.
Carl, up the back. Go for it, mate. Who's the question to?
I don't want to...
Yeah, go for it.
How are you going to stop the Islamification of this country?
Because Australia is such a beautiful country and we have fantastic laws, we have the civil rights of all Australians, we want to hold up the Constitution, we want to just support our Australian current laws that are already here. Our laws currently really protect Australians and Australian citizens, but it's our government that's actually bringing in different legislations, and we're just going to stop all of those. We just need to preserve Australia the way it is.
Thanks very much, Wanda.
Wait up.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
How long till lock and vote?
I beg your pardon?
How long until I can vote for you as a party lot, as opposed to Liberal, Labor, Greens?
We actually are a party now. We have the director sitting just down there. If I can either direct the microphone to Andrew, hope nobody's got an offence to that, and he'll be able to answer that question. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you, sorry. What ornament actually answering it?
How long do we can vote for?
At this election. At this election.
Right.
Well, if enough people do that federally.
Anybody else
that's
got a
right
question
away.
there? Who's got that? Brian?
John.
Go for it, John.
Good evening, my name's John Dolan, and I'd just like to say, first of all, animal rights, I tell you what, I've seen them on Parliament steps, and I wish we had that many people actually concerned about the abuse of children.
Yeah, good on you, John.
Okay. Question.
Go for Bob.
Hang on, John's still...
Oh, sorry. No, I thought you were sitting down there, John.
No, just getting my little notes. Okay. So, my question is to anybody up there that actually feels like they can answer this. We're talking jobs and growth. We've heard it in and out for weeks. When we talk about the new French subs, does anybody realise that we've actually got to change the sub from a nuclear submarine to a diesel submarine, and then change the design of the submarine so that it can actually take the new engines, and then change the flotation system so that the submarine actually works? And we're not going to do anything in submarines for at least 7 years. So where does this actual jobs and growth come from? The new RAH, 457 labour from China. The superhighway road, 457 is mostly from Ireland. So what are we going to do for the Australian in the way of jobs and growth?
Who would like to answer that? Go for it.
It's John, isn't it?
Yeah.
John, it's a good question, because we're hearing from politicians they're going to do a little bit of this infrastructure and so forth, and I've queried different politicians and their offices and the offsiders, etc., and they're going to borrow, of course, again. Here we go, more biggies overseas. What the CEC, Citizens Electoral Council, is promoting, and has been doing for 28 years, that we have this national, infrastructure bank. You could call it Commonwealth, like the old Commonwealth Bank used to, which funded the war, which funded the East West Railway line, and I believe Kozlow scheme. So, with that in mind, you have a bank that's creating money that goes directly into infrastructure that we own. So therefore you could do the railroads, you could do manufacturers, you could help farms, machinery, tooling companies, cars, you call it. When I was a young fellow, I believe it was Massey Harris made here, Fords and Majors, there's a whole bunch of people, machinery made here, and we could have that as well. So that would get the ball rolling. We could have dams, hydropower. If people want, just understand, England's getting nuclear power, another power station. Germany's getting a pebble bed nuclear station. We find it scary as hell because of Maralinga, etc. But the Poms don't care. The British don't care. So we need to do our own funding. We don't have to have these leeches, I call them, banksters, leeches for overseas, IMF, World Bank, smiling at us, City of London, bankers, sucking us dry. And that's what they're doing now. Thanks, Bob.
Anybody else got their hand? Go for it, Bob.
Yeah, look, Bob Jamison's my name, and I came along because I wanted to ask Jamie Briggs a question, and I think he's just there, right? We've got a good view of his best side.
I might be able to answer it for you.
Jamie, well, I'll put this question to the people. Can you put your hand up if you think it's a great idea that we sell off all our best land to China? Anybody? No. Well, what about the TTP? The Trans-Pacific Trading Partnership. That is free trade, anyone can sell their crappy food to Australia, we buy it, and if it makes us sick and we say we don't want it, we can be sued for affecting the profits of another company in an overseas country. The laws have gone overseas if that TPP gets signed. Jamie, you've got an answer for that? Oh, sorry. What about a good idea, and a guy from the Citizens Electoral Council referred to this, a great idea that we bomb Afghanistan. I grew up, I didn't get called up for Vietnam, but I had friends that was, and one kid that I went to school with was killed in Vietnam because the communists were coming down and we had to protect the countries that were being invaded by communists, which is Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia, which today, 40 years later, are all basket cases. Right, economic basket cases. And what about China? So we had to go out there and get our asses shot off to protect Vietnam, Cambodia and Laos.
Bob, the question? Do you want to give somebody a question here? We'll try
I wanted to ask my question to Jamie. And,
No.
okay.
It's cruel.
Okay, well...
Just quickly.
Yeah, the banks. No, I want his best side. Can you turn it around for me, please? Oh, yeah,
Okay for it, Bob. Okay, keep it going. Yeah, right.
The banks. Look, the guy from the Citizens Electoral Council had it right. There's a banking fraud. Our governments, they want to keep us happy. They don't want to put up taxes, but they want to spend money. So they go to the banks and they say they want $100 billion or whatever. And that is not money. It is digital entries on a computer. And so we owe overseas banks $100 billion or whatever it is. And we pay back the money that they just created out of thin air. And we pay interest. And it is a rot. And we've got a Prime Minister who's a former CEO of Goldman Sachs, and he's got his money stashed away in the Cayman Islands. Thank you very much, Mr. Turnbull.
Good on you, Bob.
Yeah, he's about as good as that Jamie there.
Thanks, Bob. John?
Thank you, Peter. My name's John Swear. I'd like to ask all the questions, all the candidates, and what a great lot of candidates too, eh? Aren't they? Can I ask each of the candidates the same question, and can you please give me a quick answer? I'm going to ask you to just not elaborate, but just a quick answer. I'd like to ask you, what's the two most important things that a government must ensure to make our country great? The two most important things, the two most critical things. Michael?
Less tax and more freedom.
Okay, Bob?
I agree, less tax and more freedom, but there's jobs as well.
John?
I'd say peace and prosperity.
Kai?
Ensure future employment and ensure also the fact that truth, openness and transparency gets carried on through all of the polarities in the political realm.
Thanks, Kai. Wanda?
I believe we need secure borders and a surplus budget.
Okay, right. And Judith?
The safety of our citizens and listening to the people.
Okay, and Steve?
Preserving our families and preserving the nation.
Thank you, they're all good. Would you like me to tell you mine?
Well and truly.
Mine two are make sure our country is secure and ensure freedom of speech.
Good on you, John. Right, who else we got over here? Yeah, come.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Tim Dwyer and I'm from Gawler. I have in my possession something that every political party and member should have. That is the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia. Right? I have been in 11 federal parliamentarians' offices and asked them if I could have a look at their constitution. They have never seen one. They don't know what's in it. And did you know that it is illegal to teach this in high school in this country? Now, my question is this. To all the candidates we have here, have you seen this?
Yes, I have.
You have?
I own it.
Good. You own it. Who else owns one? Okay. In this document, there's a couple of things that are there's a lot of things that are very important, but two things I'd like to bring to your attention, if I may. In the preamble, on page 286, it's talking about where the authority lies. Does it lie within the Parliament? They give reference to the American Constitution, the Canadian Constitution, and it says, for the truth is, the absolute, total and uncontrollable authority remains with the people. That's you. That's your family. If we elect and vote for any of you good people and you get into office, there's something that you must be aware of. You haven't read it, you know it exists, but in this country, failure to know the law is not an excuse. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you know that the corporate government that we have has introduced 7 million statutes since 1986? Do you know them all? Probably not.
But they don't either.
Now, in here, up the back on page 988 in section 128 subsection 481, it says, a constitution is a charter of government. It is a deed of trust. Every politician that we have had since at least 1986, and it was set up decades before that, with the advent of the Australia Act, has breached the trust of the people within the Commonwealth. Now, if you good folk are going to put yourself in a position to be elected as senators, you are then in a position of trust. We are the grantors, you are the trustees, and we are the beneficiaries. Do not breach our trust. Do not. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Tim. Brian. Yep, go for it. Mrs. Elliott.
Mr. Chairman, I remember that when it became that people were getting long service leave for work that they'd done for a certain employer, and then the longer they stayed, again they'd get another payment as another long service leave. I ask these candidates, will they dare to bring in that sort of position for the politicians instead of getting a full lifetime payment regardless of whether they've served only a very few years, and help get rid of people like ex-prime ministers who are not only full pay but an office and a car and 10 flights per year as maximum, and so on.
Okay.
And bring it back to
I think we'll get an answer from all of them.
level.
I'm pretty sure we'd all do that, but if anyone, maybe it's easier just to work out who wouldn't do that.
Yeah, we got to stop the rot that's going on. That's all I can say. We have to block it completely. You finish up, that's it.
As I understand it, at the moment, a senator gets the lifelong pension after 2 terms, which is roughly 12 years. I mean, politicians in general, they should be, and judges and many other similar positions, they should be based on contribution schemes just like everyone else.
When I started working, retirement age was 65, which it was. And now as I get closer to 65 every day, they move the goalpost. And I don't like it when there's one set of rules for someone. In other words, their pension, whether they're entitled to or not is one thing, but what we can demand is you don't get it until you reach retirement age for starters. And as far as the gold, that's not One Nation's policy, the gold cards have to go. The former Prime Ministers can catch a cab and pay for themselves.
Yeah. Thank
you. Certainly my belief is that politicians should be just like everyone else in terms of when they get their entitlements. I personally haven't really held a lot of faith in superannuation, and it being around for me when I get to an age of when the politicians deem that I should be retiring. I don't see it it shouldn't be any different for people who are working in government, whether it's as a public servant or whether it's as a public servant as a politician, because essentially that's what politicians are. They are public servants.
Thanks very much, Judith. Wanda?
One of our top policies is to make a smaller and a smarter government, and one of our things that we really would aim to work at is just abolishing unproductive programs that the government is currently running, cut costs, the spending that they do is just out of control, and it just needs to be all cut. So yeah, we would certainly follow through with that.
Thanks very much, Wanda. Just remember, this is being filmed, so whatever they say, we've got it on record. And last time we had a flag event, we had some sneaky, dirty little rotter in here recording it and sent it to the papers. So I wonder if that sneaky, dirty little rotter's back here again. Anybody got a red face? Go for it, Kai.
I'd just like to say that I believe that what is good for one is good for all, and I believe what everybody else has to pay and gets paid, superannuation, entitlement, gold watch, gold ring, you name it, I believe everybody should receive the same as everybody else as an equal.
Good on you, Kai. I think the age of entitlement's over for us and over for them. Can we get somebody, I'll come back to you, John, we'll get somebody, Neil?
I posed this question to Jamie Briggs some time ago. If there's a tough decision to come which could cost you your job but would benefit Australia as a whole, would you make it? Or would you vote to sit on your backside in Parliament? Well, he said he would vote to sit on his backside in Parliament. Jamie Briggs.
Disgusting.
My big concern is unemployment. And the only way we're going to overcome unemployment is to make ourselves more competitive. And to do that, we've got to get rid of the luxuries that we have in our system. Long service leave, where else in the world? Nowhere. Annual leave loading, how bloody ridiculous. Superannuation being paid 100% by the employer, ridiculous. Let the employee start and pay half, and let the employer pay half. Get rid of some of our hopeless public holidays. Race days, you've got to be kidding. Labor Day, you've got to be kidding. Queen's birthday, you've got to be kidding. If we get rid of some of these on costs, we would start to become competitive. Would any of you be prepared to stick your neck out?
Anybody like to answer that? Go for it.
Yeah, there was a few things you mentioned there too. The state governments have about a 5% payroll tax. Every time you pay someone $1 or hire someone, the business is taxed 5% of that wage. So that's straight away a 5% punishment on employing people. That's why when you go to McDonald's, Coles or Woolworths, you've got a machine because it's cheaper. It's 5% cheaper on that aspect. And they don't have all these leave and things like that. So it's not just about the work entitlements, it's about every single tax that is put on business for hiring people. You could be forgiven that the government was pro-jobs when they're pro-jobs tax. But yeah, there is reform in certain things like Saturday versus Sunday and common sense things. I mean, if why do we have a minimum wage for the entire nation? I think you'd agree that in a place that has a low cost of living, you don't need as much for minimum wage as a place with a high cost of living. So the idea of perhaps letting the states, for example, set these rates, and the states may say, look, if you live in a low cost of living area, we're going to set it this rate. But we don't have that flexibility. The federal government is a one-size-fits-all system, and the Liberal Democrats want to decentralise things so local people can make local decisions.
Thanks, Michael. Any other questions? Lindsay?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. My name's Lindsay Gibson. I live at Prospect Hill, nothing to hide. Okay, I have to be standing up because my beautiful profile. I'd like to direct a question to John from the Shooters Party, and of course, quite rightly, a farmers' party. I happen to be a farmer. But just before I give you the question, John, I've got to say my two main concerns in relation to the upcoming federal election is the free trade agreement and also the PTT. Trans-Pacific, I always get it wrong because I'm dyslexic, my brain's gone, but that's okay. Those two things are totally against the interests of Australians, I must say. And I intend to talk to politicians apart from you people, which have been good enough to come here tonight, and I'm going to talk to you after about it. They worry me to death as a primary producer. Now, getting back to you, John, I happen to have an armoury with a few weapons in it, and I have them for vermin control, etc., what farmers do. I deplore shooting animals for no reason. I heard tonight that they're going to jump on us now and make the armoury that we have, farmers have, quite justifiably, and we should have them, so expensive by making us do things like put mesh around the buildings now, and it's going to cost us 10 or 20 grand just to hold our weapons. It's just the government trying to squeeze weapons out, and I don't really mind that with illegal weapons, but for the average digger like me, I find that a very shallow sort of piece of legislation that might be coming in just to again pick on the farmers again in one other way.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. Firstly, on the free trade agreements, I mean, Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party policy there is any such agreement has to be beneficial both ways, and that's a test that in any agreement like that must be examined against. Similarly with all treaties that aren't actually approved by Parliament, that's in federal Parliament, should be void. So I mean, in terms of the firearms issue, the regulations haven't come out yet, but the state government, the police were proposing during the discussions to have a variety of steps between different quantities of firearms. So if you've got up to 10, you'd have to have a gun safe. If you had up to 20, something else. Up to 30 was like a burglar alarm. I think over 30 was a burglar alarm and a closed circuit TV, and by the time you get to about 40 or 50, which is only a small amount of people, you basically have to have a strong room, which is what you're largely describing. It's basically categories in that. I mean, in terms of the justification, we've asked for evidence at many steps along the way, and usually the police say they don't have any actual statistics to support. They claim that there's a lot of burglaries from farms and rural areas, and that claim has varied from 1,100 in a year at a meeting to in the press being something like 350, and then another times 230. 230 I don't think was in a year, I think it was over 5 years in actual fact, or something like that. So I mean, the statistics are quite, the evidence isn't actually being shown. Basically, there's an aim to reduce private firearm ownership, and I've argued in these meetings that for farmers it's a tool of trade, it's not a privilege, it's a tool of trade.
Good on you, John. If we had more guns, we'd have less burglars. Brian?
I've got a foghorn.
No, you're all right, Brian. Can you just get down to this old girl in here?
Excuse me. Just talking about the Constitution. I was wondering who on the stage thinks we should be a republic? Anybody? Yep, that's all right. I was just wondering.
Go for it.
Then
Give us your
the
reason
whole
why.
Constitution would change, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's a
We'd have to write another book.
It's a perplexing problem because we've got to get away from the QE2 mentality, so forth. In my opinion, that's my opinion. CEC, I'd have to see where they stand on that because I'm speaking on behalf of Alex tonight. But that's my thoughts are that we need to break away from the clutches of this QE2 City of London mentality. That's my opinion, and be our own country. We need to stand on our own feet. We need our own national bank that provides our own funds so we can do infrastructure, that sort of stuff. And schools, that's what we need to do. It upset a lot of people. Well,
Only trouble is, who would you trust to rewrite it? Brian, can we get microphone to Jenny here? We just want to keep this going, so...
Peter, you just got in ahead with what you said then, but what I think too is that Our Constitution right now protects a lot of people better than anything that anyone is in at the moment you could trust to rewrite one.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially, you know, and with the Recognised campaign, I am sure that they don't realise that they're actually, if they looked into the Constitution, which you've got and which holds a lot of things, they don't realise how protected they actually were under the original Constitution, and to come under something that they rewrite, well, it'd be very, very silly to do that. They're more protected now. Yeah, so do you want me to bring that around? That's what I want to say. I wouldn't trust anyone we've got at the moment.
Yeah, if there's anybody that, just before we do, Jenny, just can we give it to other people that haven't said anything yet? Frank? Because I'm trying to try and give everybody a go and then we can come back to other people. Go for it, Frank.
Thank you. My name is Frank Scott. I have a question and I have a statement first. In answer to the question, what are the two most important things you pursue? I say that in this country there's property rights and there's lots of democracy. Now, my question is directed at each of you as would-be Senate candidates. You do realise from the history of Samuel Griffith that your role is to represent your state. It's not to represent any party. Now, I realise you're all independents and that makes it pretty easy for you. But the corruption of our Senate by the two major parties is the biggest single loss of democracy in this country. And I wish there was more time to talk about the loss of property rights. This country will be nowhere if we can't hang on to sovereignty, and we won't have sovereignty if we don't have property rights, if we don't have true democracy. And I'm not talking about free speech, I'm talking about the simple business of democracy. The numbers count. So again, my question is for each of you, and I guess I'm just going to get a nod from each of you, that you understand your role as would-be senators, that your primary job is to represent your state. Thank you.
I think we've got that nod, Frank. Does anybody else have their hand up that we haven't got to as yet? Right. Rod from Stony. Don, is it? Over here. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, Don from Stonyfield. I've been badgering 5AA for years, and with that, one of the things I've got a great concern why I've come along tonight, I'm not a farmer and I didn't go to Herbury Agricultural High School, I only went to Unley High School after I left before Julia Gillard came along and stuffed it up. But basically what I'm on about is that I badgered all the Liberal candidates that were on marginal seats, Christopher Pine, our friend Jamie Briggs, also Southcott, and also what's his name, Matt Williams down at Marsh. And the Australian government, in my opinion, just seems to be assessed leading up to the sale of the Kidman enterprise, which in my opinion would have been the greatest debacle of all times, because over in New Zealand the Chinese went and bought the largest dairy conglomerate over there and all the milk of all the neighbours, and then put in a UHT plant and had Chinese packaging on it and sent the whole lot back to China. Now, if they bought the Kidman estate, there's no... Christopher Pine told me that they've got an agreement on a contract. Well, the contract's worth stuff all. Because as soon as you own the commodity, you can do whatever you like with it. You don't have to agree with anyone. Now we've got a situation over in Western Australia. Friends of mine are into fly in, fly out. The mines over there, they're putting off heaps of workers. We've got heaps of mines that are on caretaker mode, and the ones that are not on caretaker mode have been shut. And then also they've got contamination with the tailings dams, which the taxpayers are going to have to pick up the tax or the cost to re-establish the land back to where it was before, after all the goodies have been taken away. Now I want to ask, why should we sell our farms to the Chinese? The British have realised who actually owns, and with that they find out who the directorates are, which countries are actually there, and who's fair dinkum, who actually owns the thing. Not just on a straw company, that this one, the Kidman one, the company soon after the guy that gave the millions to the pork powder to win the grand final, is he going to take back his $3 million? Because you can't have a gift without a condition. So my question is, why should we flag ours off and make sure it remains in Australian hands so the next generations can come along and own the land and own the farms and control the commodities so we can feed ourselves?
I think we'll get an answer from all.
Thank you.
A quick answer from all.
I'll try to be quick, but remember why they're selling the land. They're selling the land because we tax and we regulate them, we push up their water prices, we put all these restrictions on farmers, and then they've got no money, they're bankrupt, and they get forced into a sale. If we had a system where we respected their property rights, we had low taxes, we had low regulations, we would be a much wealthier country overall. And if those farmers did want to sell, they would be probably selling to wealthy Australians. We have a situation where we're all getting poorer, and that's why it's sold.
Yes, I don't. Well, I think the CEC, as far as they're concerned, it's killing them seeing this land being sold off, and the water rights, Howard and Turnbull organised overseas, etc. I come from a fruit block background, and I know there's a lot of stress going on the Riverland now, and there's quite a few fellas that they're on suicide watch, I suspect, because of what I've been told. So we need to protect our land here in this country, and also we need to stop the NRM and these horrible taxes that are going on our fruit producers. So we CEC would be fighting for all this with their legislation, etc. So that's where they stand.
The Shooters, Fishers and Farmers policy, they've got two policies in their area. One is to establish a register of foreign-owned lands and properties, and the other is to reduce the trigger for the Foreign Investment Review Board from $16 million down to $1 million, which is the same as New Zealand. In terms of sales of larger properties, there's obviously a national interest. Now, there is another aspect, and we have to look at farmers' interests as well. For the where it's not a large market share or a large issue in Australia, a property often represents a superannuation policy for the farmer. He's got no other retirement when he retires. So a smaller trigger point, and and that's for an investigation, of course, makes sense for actual farmers' own interests. In the wine industry, due to a wine glut, we had a lot of growers who couldn't produce profitably. They couldn't sell their properties at any sort of a reasonable value. So they had to keep producing at below cost. It was actually the dairy farm is another issue, very similar to that now. It was actually some Chinese buyers who came in that pushed the price back up, and they only represent a small area of the total vignerons. But I argued back then with the winemakers that it was in their interest to support local growers, because the Chinese vignerons supply to Chinese purchased wineries, which then sell to the Chinese market, which pushes them out of those areas of the Chinese market, so they can't export there. So it's a complex area, but certainly we need more reviews, and certainly in terms of larger properties like Kidman, it's crazy to be selling such huge areas of Australia. So.
Thanks, John. Just quickly, Flag Australia is dead against selling any part of our agricultural land. Leasing, maybe, but selling it, no. Once you sell something, you lose the capacity to earn. Kai?
I'm just going to speak on behalf of Darren Hinch and Lynn Grosser, and I'm not making any politics, but I'll speak on behalf. I'm sure that America wouldn't sell off their own land to foreign interests, where they lose all of the monies, all of the influx, all of the potentials, all of the properties, all of the actual property of that country. A lot of other countries in this world that we live in, they do not allow anyone to come in and buy under $499 million thresholds. That is just utterly ridiculous, and I'm sure Darren and Lynn would definitely vote against that.
Australian Bibbie Alliance is certainly against selling our land to China. However, we would consider a trade to a country that would allow us to buy land in theirs. For example, like BHP, they do own land in other countries where they do mining. So if we were to do a trade, but it certainly would be under a 99-year lease. It would not be sold outright.
Certainly the Australian Motoring Enthusiast Party is about what's in the best interest of Australia, and selling off our country is definitely not in the best interest of Australia.
Well, I'm not going to go against this crowd, that's for sure. noise of that crowd, I won't get out the door. One Nation opposes majority overseas owned farms. We also oppose what's happening in the real estate industry, particularly in Sydney, where Chinese buyers are buying up real estate. It pushes the prices up, and other factors come in that our kids simply can't afford to buy a home. So it's not just the farms, it's all of our assets that are being sold off.
Thanks, John. Anybody else who hasn't had a question? Alan Cricky, Brian. Okay, oh, Dean and then Alan.
Yeah, Dean and then Alan. No, you go first.
Go for it, Dean. You want to stand up, mate? Stand up.
Yeah, Dean Foot. People might remember what happened at Roxby Downs when Xstrata, which was a Swiss company, were going to come in and take it over and bring in cheap labour, fly them in, fly them out, and never see outside Roxby Downs. And BHP jumped in and bought the Roxby Downs, but it's still not out of the melting pot there, because I think BHP going down the gurgler like they are with around the world, with commodity prices falling and various other accidents and things like that, possibly it might be sold again. Very quietly though, this time I'd say.
It's amazing how quietly it gets. Yes, Alan, over. Carl? Yeah, just... No, hang on. Hang on, sorry, Alan Steiner. We'll go Alan Cricky first. Sorry about that.
I used to be undecided, but now I'm not.
No, go for it, Alan.
Just a general question. You're all running for federal politics, be it the Senate or the lower house. Who cares? It's federal government. Young bloke joins the Australian Defence Force. I don't know whether you people realise that it's a two-way contract. He or she, the person, decides that they're going to serve a period of time, and the government or the Defence Force says to them, you give us this time and we will do the right thing by you at the end of that time. So you come to us in a fit, healthy, proper manner, and we will ensure at the end of your service that you will leave in a fit, healthy, proper manner. Crap, bullshit. Doesn't happen. You do everything that you possibly need to do for your duration of your service, and at the end of the service, you're scrapped. You're thrown out. Nobody gives a damn. They have an entire department called the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the key word there is veteran, that don't give a damn about you. They are there to save money for the government. They're not there to look after the veteran. What are you going to do about it? We've been promised for 60 years to do something about the Defence Force Retirement Benefit Scheme. Hasn't been done. Since 2009, the TPI disability rate has been taken out of the general rate of the disability pension increase and isolated, so that everybody else got in civilian life got an increase in their disability support pension, except veterans. It's a joke. It's ridiculous. Now the veteran community has been turned into third-rate citizens in this country, and it doesn't matter what politician, federal or state, that we approach, we can't get an answer. We have now the Australian Defence Service Organisation, which is 14 out of 15 ex-service organisations that have got together to try and lobby both state and federal governments throughout this country to get a fair deal for Australian veterans. We don't ask for anything extra. We don't ask for anything over the top. All we've ever asked for is a fair go. You're all aspirants for federal government. What are you going to do about it?
Thank you. It's a really, really valid question. I have a son who served in Vietnam, I beg your pardon, in Afghanistan, and he has come back and he is suffering, and I feel you. I have watched my son suffer dramatically, and it's hard yards, and Australian Liberty Alliance has a really strong policy that wants to protect our military, we want to protect our borders, and we certainly want to protect our boys and girls that serve in our country. So I will say to you, sir, that if I go into the Senate in honour of Australian Liberty Alliance, I will do my absolute best to get the best deal for the people that stand up and protect our country, because this is one goddamn wonderful country that we need to protect.
I'll speak on behalf of Darren Hinch and Lynn Grosser, and I will say this, that I believe in my heart, mind and soul that they've already said to me in other words that they will put policy ahead to save the repat, number one, to save all of South Australian healthcare services across the board. Closing 7 hospitals and downgrading 7 hospitals into only 3 is political suicide for any government, doesn't matter what planet you're from. And that context is, I believe that Darren and Lynn would do the right thing by saving the repat and keeping other hospitals open and not closing them, plus also to, how shall I say, use the right of the people to cut back these top-heavy executive government departments, no matter where they come from.
As I said before, I lost my father as a result of what we now would call post-traumatic stress. So to answer your question, what I would do, I think I'll probably get Tony and J.A. and yourself and hop on the aeroplane with me if I get elected, and come over and you 3 can help me sort them out. Because what it will take the human element. It will take the human element. If you haven't experienced it, when I was a digger, it was the Cold War. But if you haven't experienced it, if you haven't experienced the mateship, then you don't understand it. Right? If you haven't suffered the loss, you don't understand it. And what we do is we take that human loss and we put it right on his doorstep. Right? Depending on the balance of power or how much kick any of us will have, but we go toe to toe right on his desk and say, this is what has to happen. Right? And we put the human story to the person. And remember, if they don't, you've seen what's happened in this environment, this political environment. What happens if the people don't get their way this time? Do you think Malcolm Turnbull will roll that dice a second time? I think we've got the greatest opportunity we've ever had to change things. Because when the independents get in and the government doesn't play ball, doesn't give us not what we want, but what we have to have, we've got the greatest chance ever of actually making a change. Because he can do it, we'll stop supply and let him roll that dice again and see what happens. And next thing we won't be 2 political parties, it'll be 10 political parties. We've got an opportunity to change just those exact issues.
Go on you, Stephen. Anybody else?
For me, it's a no-brainer. We spend a considerable amount on, say, for example, prisoners in Australia. I think that costs about $150,000 a year. We spend a large amount on free welfare for some new immigrants. It's a no-brainer that veterans who have been continually left out are just being, that they shouldn't just be forgotten. That a lot more needs to be done. It's an obvious one.
Can I just, certainly from the AMP's perspective, and I don't think anyone up here would disagree as a minor party, that veterans have been let down badly. I have close friends who've gone off to Afghanistan, come back being persecuted by the Department of Veterans Affairs, and it's certainly, like you're saying, it takes that human element to get action. And I know that there is definitely a commitment from the AMEP that the right thing is done by our veterans.
Well, the CEC, as I understand, with their infrastructure, would be building the hospitals, etc., to support the people that need it, as we can see it. But also the veterans, they need to be supported, and we need to treat them with honour. And that's the most important thing. We have to look after them. Post-traumatic stuff. I had an uncle that came back from World War II, and he went through all sorts of hells when he came back. And some of his mates didn't live all that long afterwards either. So it's a thing that we have to look after these people, and but also the disabled, etc. They've been kicked around, and they need help as well. So with the infrastructure, with hospitals that we own, and we're not going to lease them out and that sort of thing, that would have to be that's a priority. A whole bunch of stuff's priority, but that would be certainly a priority to honour people that fought for us. That's for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of the questions we're asking tonight are how do we fix all these problems the politicians cause, and like with the sale of farmland, I want to talk about how we can prevent the problems happening in the first place. I don't want the farmers poor so they have to sell, rather than say, oh, let's stop the buyer that's helping the farmer buy the property. I'm saying, why do they have to be poor in the first place? When it comes to veterans, why do we go to too many unnecessary wars? You think about Vietnam, that's probably one of the most traumatic wars. It was a war that I think most people would say it's unnecessary. Maybe there'll be some people that disagree, but why do we have to go to so many wars and join in with some of our allies? We need to be careful, and we need to change the way Parliament thinks. The Liberal Democrats think that the Parliament should be voting on if we go into an offensive war. If it's an emergency, we're being invaded, of course, that's what the government does. But in terms of most wars we have, they are planned. The Parliament should vote, our representatives should vote. And when it comes to things like the repat, a lot of people, and this is probably where we can differentiate, other parties may say, oh, we support or we oppose the repat. The great thing about the Liberal Democrats is we say, let's fund the patients, and the patients can choose to put their money in the repat, and then the repat would stay open, or the patients can put their money into another hospital, and that hospital can serve them. So we take the choice approach so that everyone can put their money where they want.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Bob.
Can I just make a point there?
Brian, just get it.
You're talking about government policy, okay? The government sends the military to war. I'm talking
about the veterans that are sent, or the servicemen that are sent to do what they have to do, what they're trained to do, and then come back, having been put at the sharp end, suffering the consequences, and then not being supported. Yeah. Repatriation is part of their entitlements. It's not something that they have to pay into, it's part of their entitlement. It's part of their recovery, it's part of their rehabilitation.
And what I'm saying is, if we prevent a lot of this waste, if we don't waste things so often, we would be a wealthier nation, and it wouldn't be a problem. It would be a drop in the bucket. But when we spend and when we waste all the time, when we create problems, then we have big problems, and you get governments becoming cheapskates. We would prevent the problems. That's what I'm trying to differentiate myself from the other candidates here.
Which then becomes your job. Don't send us to war.
Exactly. Let the politics
Very good, Alan. Flag Australia's policy on that is all politicians do 2 terms.
In a battlefield.
That's it.
Yeah.
Just one thing you mentioned about, businesses becoming poor, whether it's a farmer or whatever. How in the hell do you stop that sort of thing when a farmer could be in drought for 7 years? You know, we've seen it where farmers are being forced off their own. The banks were going to take over. Charlie Phillip comes to mind, Carisbrook Station. Never been behind, ever, in a mortgage repayment. And because he was in drought, the equity has gone from his property and he gets forced off the land. Imagine packing up and going, and the next day it rains. All of a sudden the equity's there. So when you mention poor, that sort of worries me a little bit, because we've got circumstances where, you can become poor for no fault of your own.
Well, an Australian infrastructure bank would sort that out, that farmer, take over his debt from the other banksters and lend him money at, say, 0.5%, 1% or whatever to get over the problem with the drought, and if need be, extend the loan and so that repayments are a lot lower if there's any repayments to be made, or just put it forward in time. One life I was in a bank, and there was trouble with home loans, etc. So we extended the home loans so that the folk could stay in their homes. That's not happening now. They're losing them. So we need to support the farmers. So with the infrastructure bank, that could be done with sorting out manufacturers that were struggling because of the drought, the machinery, etc. You could do that, and that would help a lot of people in this country, a lot of farmers, and a lot of people in the Riverland. And we need to buy back our water. That's another thing.
That's good to hear. Should have never been sold. Alan?
Thanks, Peter. Alan Steiner. That was a brilliant discussion, and well done, Alan, for raising that and for all for you guys on the panel. My question is on water, or discussion on water and a question. I'm a member of CEC, so I know the plans pretty well for the CEC, and like the Bradfield scheme, as Bob mentioned, the Clarence River scheme, which would get water back in the Murray, would, to me, solve all the problems with the water, to make the Murray a viable proposition again, so there's no fighting and arguing over who gets the water. And would also, I think when I see last time mentioned about the saving flooding going through Grafton in New South Wales, would probably give water to Broken Hill, who's in desperate need of water for the whole city population. So I've got a question for Wanda. What was your plan to increase the Murray's flow? I'm just very interested to hear that. Thank you.
No worries, thank you. We have one of our ALA candidates is Ron Pike, and he's got a fantastic water policy that's actually for the nation. I know here in South Australia we really want to look after ourselves, but I guess with ALA we want to look at our future for our country as a whole. So this water policy that we have will basically double the use of the water that we use here in South Australia. Not the wasted water that gets evaporated or washed out to sea. It's actually going to double the amount of water that we have currently now that we can use. And by doing that, basically by the northern top of New South Wales, we're going to literally reroute some rivers to bring them straight down. That's going to feed into our river system. There will be a weir, not a dam, a weir put in on our lake down the bottom. That's actually going to stop the fresh water going through. It's going to hold the water back. Again, it's going to give a lot more water for farmers, fruit growers, all the way through the riverland. It's going to produce jobs. It'll make us able to grow a lot more food. We're just going to have water, and water is life, and that's what we're going to give this day. I'm sorry, I don't have all the details. It's a very complex program, and I've given you a whole roundabout thing, but I certainly can give you much more deep information into it later and stuff like that, but that's a bit of a, just oversight.
Thanks, Wanda. John?
Wanda, I'd like to ask a question. I'd like to congratulate Peter and the panel tonight on the effort they've put in and the job they're doing. It's not an easy task, and I do congratulate you on what you've done, and also Peter for the number of people here, around about the 100 mark.
Thanks, John.
Wanda, I happened to be in association with a friend of mine at Coolangatta a month ago, and she had attended one of the Australian Liberty Alliance meetings, and the quotes that she gave us at lunch was this, that 75% of the migrants or the Islamic people coming into Australia are unemployed. And I want to know what your feelings are on this, because at the same time she was wheeling her trolley through Coles in Coolangatta, and there was a nice young girl behind the counter, and she said, "Oh, aren't you?" And there was a woman in a burqa, or one of those bloody things. I'm not racist, don't get me wrong, I just don't like anybody 3 miles off Australian shores. So I'm not racist at all. But the bottom line is that it turned out that this young girl said, "Oh gosh, you must be very hot in that outfit." And she looked at her and said, "Within 6 years, you'll all be wearing one of these." And the thing is, with these Islamic people coming out, we know that they're allowed to have 3 wives or 4 wives, and they go on the dole, and then as Australians we're paying for them, and there's nothing to stop this situation coming through. And the second question is to Judith. I believe they're just a single party, a single issue party. But the point is this, that what I'd really like to know, Judith, is how you're going to create jobs from a single issue party.
Wanda, do you want to go first?
Certainly. Ismail, with Australia, we have very strong, very, very strong beliefs on closing our borders for about 10 years. We would like to assess who actually comes in here. We have so many wonderful people here from many different countries that come in here to Australia that really enjoy being Australia. They contribute to Australia. They start to work. Their religions are wonderful within Australia. When it comes to what you're referring to, yes, we certainly do want to limit the number of those people that are coming into this country because there are many, many issues, and it's a threat to not only Australia, but it's a global threat, and we really want to address that so that stops here in Australia, because if we don't shut the gates and we don't start looking after our borders and we don't start looking after the Australians that are currently here in Australia before letting more in, where are we going to be? Our budget is already going through the roof. We need to stop it, and we need to stop it now.
Thanks, Wanda. Judith?
Although the Australian Motoring Enthusiast Party may appear to be, a single issue party, as a senatorial party, obviously we have our party values rather than specific policy, because we look at legislation as it comes through, judge it against the values of the party and the information that's available at the time. So it's very much a case of consulting with stakeholders. I know that our current sitting Senator, Ricky Muir, has been very active in getting a reputation as a bit of a conscience voter. Certainly a lot of the work that's been done already by the AMEP has been around encouraging further support in the aftermarket industry for the automotive industry, since the government saw fit to kill off our manufacturing industry in that area. That certainly has a lot of small businesses entailed within it. The motorsport industry, which encourages skill development of our drivers and driver education. There's a range of different industries that feed from the motoring industry. Because Australia is a motoring culture, we also have care for the road transport sector, and obviously keeping transport moving in this country is very important for primary producers, for manufacturing, for a range of other industries as well.
Thanks very much. Anybody have had a question? Down, yeah, just hang on, Bob. We've got to get people that haven't had a question. You sit down here, sir, with the glass.
Yes, one thing I wanted to mention, there's a gentleman over there that was talking about the worker has too many rights as far as public holidays, everything else. I've worked 30 years, 7 days a week to get what I got now, a nice house, everything else. I've busted my guts out, I've always paid my taxes. Now there's 1 million people that have come in the country, they don't bloody work, they're bleeding the whole welfare system dry, and why don't you have a go at them instead of us taxpayers that have always done done the right thing? I know you think it's a big joke, but that's where I would like to mention to these people here, make sure something's done about that, because I think it's all wrong the way it's going at the moment.
Thank you, sir. What's up about this one?
Yeah, I agree, mate. CEC, my understanding is that they're against chasing false flag wars, and that's what we're doing with the UK and USA, creating insurgencies in different countries and changing regimes. They did it in South Africa, South America. They're doing it now in Syria, Libya, and elsewhere. It's just a game to them, such that we go and help these people. We end up being lapdogs. We go in, we spend all our soldiers. They send our soldiers over there. What for? Why? And then they're bombing, doing all this sort of stuff. Next minute, you've got all these refugees coming out here. For what reason? Because they've lost their infrastructure, they've lost their power, they've lost their other place, water. And then the privatisation boys take in, like in Iraq, and thousands of American companies and multinationals have gone in, and they go in, what's it for, oil, etc. So why no more false flag wars? We've got to, and that will help stop the run into this country of immigrants or people on boats, etc.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else who hasn't had a... Yep. Thank you, Yvette. Now, Charlie.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a bit later, Yvette.
I'd just like to ask one question to all the aspiring candidates up there, and thank you most sincerely for putting your hand up and giving this a go for everybody else in this country. One question I'd like to ask is, can any of you explain to us, or to me in particular, how this new voting system is going to work, and whether it is a valid vote to just put one in the box above the line, because there are adverts on the radio and the TV saying you must mark a minimum of six numbers. And yet I have been told, and looking at the AEC website, that just one in a box is a valid vote. Can any of you verify that for me, please?
Okay, first, Dave.
I had to go and put my nomination into the Electoral Commission today, and I asked him that very question, and he confirmed to me that just one in a box is a valid vote.
Okay, for John.
And we're paying for it.
That's how I understand it too, but it also should be understood that the Australian Electoral Commission knows that those electoral adverts are wrong, and they've been challenged on this, and they continue running. So that's right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's just one thing I do want to say is it's really easy to go and get your name marked off and just maybe put one in the box, but you know what, we're all here for the same reason. We are here to get the best for our state and our nation. So if you take the time and you actually look at your independents and you start going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so forth, and you put Labor, you put Liberal, and you put the Greens right at the end, or don't even put them on the sheet at all, but you take the time and you put a number in for all of your independents, because that is how we are going to have a voice, and that's how we're going to have a say in our state. So that's the best advice I can give to you.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to what Wanda was saying. Because the power of preferencing is now in the hands of the voters, that's what Wanda is saying. Yes, you can put one above the line and leave it at that, but if the party that you've chosen doesn't get the minimum quota and your senator doesn't make it into Parliament, it's almost as if, it's as if you never voted. Yeah. So, as Wanda is saying, in order to make your vote count as long as possible, if you can fill out all of the minor parties and independents above the line, if you wish, leave the majors and the Greens out of it, your vote will never go to them. Okay? So it's about making sure that your vote will continue to count.
Good point.
So are you saying that none of you are going to preference Labor, Liberal or Green?
We don't have that power. Preferencing is all in the hands of the voters.
Thank you.
And make sure you use a pen. Take a pen with you. Eric. Brian, Eric.
Yes, Eric Randall. Just to hear all you aspiring candidates there. Talking on preserving farms, I don't know what you can do about it if you succeed. The biggest problem we have is farming, ex-farming. Look at dairy farming at the moment, from 45 cents a litre to 14 cents a litre. What other business can survive like that? It's worldwide. UK and America are under the situation. We're at the bottom of the bag. We cannot pass our costs on. We just have to bear them and go under. The government has offered something $1 million in assistance at a low interest rate. It's still money to pay back. Perhaps think about, we could think of that protectionism, but we need a minimum livable income and work up from there. Not that the supermarkets, Murray Goulburn
supplied Coles with the first cheap milk, $1 a litre, and they sucked us under. It needs to start from the bottom up, and then the supermarkets put their prices up. Not that we're screwed to the bottom, but we cannot pass our costs on once we're down below the belt. Thank you. What can be done about that?
With regard specifically to the dairy industry, as you mentioned, Murray Goulburn basically started the process off by claiming that, I believe, claiming that overseas markets had affected their sales, and they had to pass on the price cuts retrospectively to their suppliers. What can be done? Well, one issue you mentioned was retail power. We've got a concentration of retail power in this country. In the past, retailers have done the same thing, forced the price right down where the dairy has suffered. And so I mean that's one area that can be affected. That will have positive results to the dairy farmer.
Look, I think on that note, yes, Simon, in a minute we'll take about another half a dozen people, and then we'll give the candidates maybe a minute just to say their last little bit, and that way you can have a chat to them after, because it's starting to get late. So, Simon?
Thanks. Where is a question for all of you to answer. It might make or break you. I'm an anti-vaxxer. I have a son that has autism, caused through vaccinations. There's parents that have been locked up in jail because they've had their children vaccinated, and within 24 hours they've got brain damage and they've been held as responsible, shaken baby syndrome, and they've been put in jail. Now, where do you stand with vaccinations? Are you compulsory? Everyone, every cattle on this country, every tree, that's where the government's going with vaccinations. I think a baby up to about 6 years old now has 64 vaccinations in all these multi-vaccinations. You know, it's gone crazy. Malcolm Turnbull's missus is a CEO of a vaccination company. So it all starts to add up where all our money's going and their policies. So here's one for every single one of you. Where does your party stand in vaccinations?
Michael first.
So you're probably not going to like me. The Liberal Democrats do support the no jab, no pay. Based on our principle of you can be free to do what you want provided you don't harm others, we make the scientific assumption that if you don't vaccinate, you are presenting a risk, in the same sense that if you're on the road with alcohol, you may also present a risk. So that's our position. I'm being frank and quite honest with it. But we don't support forced vaccinations. It is no jab, no pay, so you wouldn't be entitled to the welfare. So that's the specific policy.
That's forced.
Of course, under the Liberal Democrats, we won't...
I understand what you're saying, pal.
Under the Liberal...
Just keep it.
Lost my bloke, mate. That's fine, but at least I'm the honest one. Yep, I know, and I'm happy to be honest.
If somebody has a vaccination, they get the vaccination so they don't get it from somebody else. So if somebody doesn't vaccinate, according to your theory, they are no threat to somebody that has the vaccination.
No, exactly. We take the scientists call it a herd mentality. They say there's a certain percentage of the population that have to get it, otherwise it's not effective. But anyway, under the Liberal Democrats, it wouldn't really be an issue because there'll be very few people on welfare because we won't be taxing you, we won't be limiting your job options.
Okay, Bob, just hang on, just keep
I'm just giving you an honest answer and I'm answering your question. I wish more politicians would do this.
Bob, just keep it on. Thanks very much.
Good on you for your honest opinion, mate.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
I don't know what CEC's thoughts are, but my personal thoughts are, I would read the Constitution. I'm not sure, S126. I can't remember. It's in the Constitution. They can't force you to do these things, right? And to take money, to take money from people that least can afford it is another thing, in another way. And forcing them to have these, I happen to have a lot of, information on the vaccinations and what's in them. Just ask your doctor or the nurse to please explain to me fully what's in the packet and what each substance does and what's inside the vaccination. Like there used to be thimerosal in the flu vaccine. There is now lots of 5 there is thimerosal, mercury, right? A mercury compound. But there's glutamate, MSG probably, a whole bunch of stuff that could be in there. Ask them to explain each one and each political party that's all for it. Ask them to give you that big thing, and the doctor will say, I haven't got the time, read this later. The chemist will say, I've asked them, could you read this later? Get the jab, right? And HPV, we know there's Gardasil's in trouble in America with court cases, etc. So please, I agree there has to be, that's something I have to hit CEC with and Alex, because we have a real problem here. And why, if the herd is vaccinated, the person is not? Interesting. How come old people get the flu when they had flu vaccinations? How come my mother got the flu when she elderly, continuing after each vaccination? The doctor couldn't tell me. Right?
Okay, John, can we give this? Thanks.
I don't know of a policy on this by the Shooters Fish Farmers Party, but I'll just give you my personal comment. And in general, in the past, the vaccination program has prevented a lot of issues, and it's an example of external benefits of a medical policy. So it's unfortunate if it does affect some people in some way, and it'd be good if there was measures to be able to prevent that. So,
thanks very much.
I can't speak on behalf of the Justice Party, I can't speak on behalf of Darren Hinch or Lynn Grosser, but I will speak on behalf of myself. I'm not that intelligent, but believe me, I've got enough intelligence to lock people away. I will say this, that you've got certain anaphylactic reactions to peanut shells, to this, to that, to all different types of anaphylactic reactions across the spectre. In the same context as I would not personally stand behind something where a child loses their brain, cannot think for themselves for the rest of their lives, and have to be straw-fed through a barrel for the rest of their life because they did take the vaccination. So my suggestion is, just on a humble opinion, you know how you get those tests where you've got 14 dots on your arm? And if you've got a reaction to one of them, you miss out, mate. Next. So in that sense, that's what I'd be doing.
Thanks, Guy. Very good.
Okay, I'm not a doctor, so I'm actually not going to try and believe that I know anything about this, and I'm really sorry that your son suffers from autism. I have a niece and a nephew that has autism, and I know it's hard yards. However, ALA's policy, we do believe that the benefit of having a community that is vaccinated, that we don't have all of those diseases running rampant within our state. Unfortunately, we do have the children that do react to the vaccination, but we do believe that in the benefit of all Australians, vaccination should be compulsory. There are a lot of medical reasons that say vaccinations aren't the only reason that unfortunately these children do get autism. You know, there is a lot of, opinions about what does cause autism. Some say it's vaccination, some say it's, from having the pill. There's a whole array. Like I say, I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell you that, but I do believe a community where our children are protected the best way that we can would have to be a better community than letting children run out there unprotected.
Thanks, Wanda. Judith?
AMEP doesn't have a policy on medical aspects. I was vaccinated as a child, but I don't have children, so it's not something that I've necessarily had to come across. So in the way that the AMEP works on these sorts of issues, it would be a case of consulting with stakeholder groups, of which obviously parents such as yourselves would be one of them, and determine what the facts are. So it would be a case of going back to the people, listening to the people.
That's what we need, listening to the people. Stephen?
I've had 8 children. Well, when I say I've had 8 children, I sort of participated in 8 children. I didn't have any myself, of course. I've raised 250 foster children. The responsibility of my children is for me to make an informed decision what I should do, what I shouldn't do. And that is the policy of One Nation. We'll tell you a very silly joke though. I'm a mechanic. What's the difference between a mechanic and a doctor? We fix our mistakes. Doctors bury them. So yes, it is the responsibility of the parent to make that decision.
Fair enough, Stephen. Look, what about we'll take about another four questions, and then we'll give the candidates a little bit of time to do their last bit of a spiel, and we'll wind it up. Gavin.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank the panel here to come along with it. It's certainly good to see. But if we didn't have some more, I wish to thank Flag for setting this up. Of course, you, Peter. I'd like to see more people that could have come along for the Senate, so that I personally think Labor and Liberal, we could all see that they've lost the plot. So the only hope we've probably got is the independent people. What I would ask, can you guys unite so we have a united force? Because I think that's a big thing to have. Like to have a united force, and I know everyone's got different ideas, but it would be great if we could actually, because otherwise we haven't got any hope. I was thinking about getting a donkey with a stencil so I could just put on the voting part. I don't know who to vote for, but perhaps I'll tonight, there's a bit of hope if we can get somebody in the Senate to help us. Australia needs it.
Good on you, Gavin.
Can
Good
I
on you, Gavin.
add something onto that?
I just want to point out that the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party actually has 5 parliamentarians across Australia. We've got 2 in New South Wales, 2 in Victoria and 1 in Western Australia. And we do work with other parties in each state to achieve outcomes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the majors stab you in the back. But we do work with other smaller parties. But in the end, the way the political system in Australia is structured is you need more than 50% of the vote in either the lower house or the upper house, preferably both, to get some sort of result. So you definitely have to work with other people and to come to compromises in order to get outcomes. So our party's experienced in that already.
Judith.
I just wanted to say that obviously with the current sitting Senator Ricky Muir from Victoria, AMP obviously has quite an extensive background over his sitting period of working with other people. I think I can probably speak for all of us here tonight in that we all have that one common goal of ensuring that minor parties remain in the Senate, because it is with the diversity of minor parties that you see here tonight that we maintain democracy. We will all have common elements, and if nothing else, the common element is that we want to keep diversity in our Senate, and that means that we have the ability to hear your voices and to represent you. Even if that is the only common element that we have currently, it is still a common element that I think I can safely say I speak on behalf of all of us here tonight.
We certainly need the Senate. We certainly need the Senate because it keeps the lower house honest. John.
Yeah, okay. This is a question. It's actually about strong border protection. Given that we have a major port that is leased to a foreign power, with limited fuel stockpiled in this country, probably no more than 2 weeks of fuel at any one time, how are we going to actually maintain a strong border protection given this situation?
Good question. Who wants to take that one on?
Yeah, I'll have a go at that.
We can make the answers as short as possible.
I'll be very quick. Under the current situation we have at the moment, we couldn't defend ourselves.
Correct.
Simple as that. We'd run out of fuel within a matter of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We've closed up all of the, just about all the refineries. So if we keep, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and that situation cannot continue. And it certainly, if I'm there with these guys here, we need to change that. We've got to become independent.
Okay, Stephen, look, we're going to take 2 more, and then we'll give the candidates a minute to do a bit of a spiel, and then we'll wind it up, and you can have a bit of a chat to them. Tim.
Yeah, look, just quickly once again, we're here tonight. I've heard the comment, some people are disappointed in the numbers that are here. I'm not. each one of you have a circuit of probably 20 or 30 or 50 friends. Tomorrow you need to get on the phone and start talking to them. It's called networking. It's a very popular pastime. We have many groups represented here, many interest groups out here. Divided, we're just a fractured bunch of people with all our different problems. If we were to unite, as it was just mentioned before, we would then have a real voice. Petitioning governments doesn't work, in case you haven't noticed. The reason it doesn't work is that at the moment, our government is a registered corporation on the US Securities Exchange Commission, state and federal. Now, it was mentioned before about writing a new constitution. The protections, Jenny mentioned, the protections we have in this book are huge. And they are so huge, and just that this is in the alterations to the Constitution. Let me just read this. In the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia, of course, is no obvious sovereignty, but a quasi-sovereignty which resides in the people of the Commonwealth. Now let me tell you this, whoever rewrites this Constitution, if ever, God forsake, we become a republic, that definitely won't be there, and the absolute, total and uncontrollable authority remains with the people, won't be there, and you will give up all and every bit of freedom that you possibly have. And as our current government is operating as a corporation, not as a government of the people, unfortunately, all you good folk up there, and I take my hat off to you, I really do. It's a lot of personal effort, energy, money, the whole lot, and thank you very much for your effort. I do appreciate it. However, you are putting yourselves into a position where you will too become a part of that corporation. And in becoming part of that corporation, you then have to succumb to the rules of the corporation, whereby if our government was forced to operate back under the constitution of this country that we currently have, and they'll only do it if they're pushed and forced through the courts to do it, then truly we will be able to defend ourselves. Our currency will be our own. We won't need the banksters. We have enough mineral resource to float our own currency as we did before. We have the knowledge, we have the ability, we just are so apathetic. And so this is why I say, I don't know when the next flag event is, but please, please, for God's sake and the sake of the country, get on the phone and talk to your people. Tell them to come here, tell them they're going to learn something, bring them along, give them a reason to come. Currently, Australia is down here. We can be up here, but we can't be up here under the corporatisation of the government, which everything you do with every government agency is a contract, not the will of the people.
Good on you.
Thank you very much.
Is there somebody that hasn't had a question or voiced their concerns? Have I missed somebody? No? Go for it, Don. Brian? We'll get a bit of weight off you, mate.
Thanks very much. I'd like to take it from a different point of view, if I may, please. Australia is the only dumbest country in the world that hasn't got antitrust. Now, in America, in the early 1930s, Boeing aircraft controlled making the planes, they controlled making the engines for the planes, they controlled the airports, and also they controlled the United Airlines. And the American government, in their wisdom, decided this is not too good for our future and said in the early 30s, you must break up this enterprise. Now in Australia, we have the majority of businesses, doesn't matter what it happens to be, controlled by Coles and Woolworths. When you have a look at their shareholding, they control petrol, pharmaceuticals, hardware, wine, bottling, packaging, you name it, just about every commodity that you touch or go into any supermarket, the like of a Wakefield, for example, with what goes, they own it or control it or have got the big end. Now, if we had the balls, which England, they don't let Tesco or all the others there. The majority of the biggest ones got over there is about 25 or 26%, something like that. But we're obsessed with letting our friends Coles and Woolworths have about 80% of the grocery market. They control the big end of the petrol market, so the petrol fluctuates every week, 20 and 30 cents. I wish I could do that with my product. My customers go nuts and tell them that I'm ripping them off. Now, if we had half the gumption with what goes, in my opinion, why doesn't someone stand up and say, like they did with Adelaide Steamship Company years ago, it was just a tangled mess of conglomerates, and they were forced to break it up and make sure that one company didn't own part of this one, another company didn't own part of that one, and give all the small little mum and dads a go and say, turn it around and let everyone have a go again, like we did in the early 1900s. That's why, in my opinion, we're crazy. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. We'll just give everybody a minute now if you want to put your bit in there. Where's Louise? Where's old Lou? Do you want to come and tap that glass, Lou? We'll only give them a minute because people are getting tired here, so they can have a bit of a chat afterwards.
Peter, while Louise is making her way up there, I'd just like to make a bit of a comment. I understand the advertiser's here tonight, is that?
That's correct.
Where is the...
Over here, Aaron's over here.
Oh, over here, okay. Other functions we've had, particularly the last one, there was articles going in the Australian about Flag being a right-wing radical mob. So I'm just wondering how the journalist here tonight feels about the people here tonight, and what sort of report's going to be made. Are we going to be made to be seen as a mob of right-wing radicals and repugnant in Jamie Briggs's mind? And also there's a gentleman over here filming the function as well. Is there any particular paper or TV channel or whatever, or political party that that one might be going to?
My face is copyright, mate, all right?
Copyright. Louise?
Yeah, but I'll just quickly address what the last question said about Coles and Woolworths. One of the reasons they're so big is people like Audi try and come in, and Coles and Woolworths use the existing laws that regulate them out. They use local planning laws that say Audi can't build here, Audi can't build there. So we actually, every regulation and tax we have hurts small business, because small business can't afford to comply with these things. So that's one of the reasons why we have this. But again, in summary, the Liberal Democrats are the party of choice. We're the party of low taxes. We're a party that has an existing senator. We're a party that got 3.5% of the vote in the last election. We're a strong party. We are the party that could become in the Senate in South Australia. I would urge you to support us. And I thank all the other candidates for coming here. I urge you to preference all of them. And like we all keep saying, Labor, Liberal, Green at the end, don't preference them, put them last, whatever. But support your minor parties, because in the end, if a sixth of you vote for each of us, none of us get elected. If you preference all of us, we will.
Please put all us guys on your list, please. The CEC, no bail-in. We've got to ban that bail-in, get rid of that bail-in effort, grabbing our deposit superannuation. Bank separation, separating the banks called Glass-Steagall. We've got to do that to protect the people's savings and super. And let the casinos, Mr. Keating called it, let them roll the dice and lose their money when they want to, if they want to. Establish the government-owned national bank to do all the funding for all your infrastructure, your dams, your fast rail, hospitals, etc. Create an economic science driver program to get your science running as well through that national bank. Shift Australia's strategic policy to align with the BRICS. That would be great. We don't want to chase these false flag wars anymore. And development for peace, not alliances for war.
Hello, I'm actually speaking to the microphone this time, and thanks to Flag for holding this event. Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party is a party that's been established for, I think it's over 20 years in New South Wales. As I said, we've got 5 parliamentarians across Australia in state parliaments. There needs to be, we're hoping for 1 or 2 in the Senate from certain states this election. I've mentioned a lot of agricultural policies. We are not a single policy party. People say, oh, you're just about shooters and firearms and so on, but I hardly talked about that tonight. I talked about agriculture and land, and we have a lot of policies on, for example, the economy, on safeguarding Australia, border protection and so on. And so I mean, and I also echo the comment that the Turnbull legislation on the Senate is designed to favour the major parties. Personal preferences can still be exercised.
Okay, all right. For my last minute, I just want to say to you, Australian Liberty Alliance is the party that is going to ask the hard questions. We are going to make this government honest, and I guess, you know, we really need to stand up and make a nation that is going to provide for our children, provide for future generations. And I guess if we all don't stand together and do this now, I don't want to tell my grandchildren in 5 years, sorry guys, I didn't try, you know, because it's really, really important for us to stand up for our kids, stand up for our grandchildren, stand up for their future. And the way we can do that is each and every one of you, which I must say thank you very much for taking the time and coming here. I want you to go home and talk to everybody that you can and try and encourage them to vote correctly. Because you know what? That's how we're going to make a difference. I can stand here and I can tell you, yep, Australian Liberty Alliance is this and this and this, but you know what? Unless we get in there, we can't make this government honest. We can't make them accountable. We can't stand there and be a pain in their backside and go, you're not going to pass that because that's not fair for South Australians. So let's all get together. Let's really encourage everybody to vote properly, look at your independence, and let's make this a great state.
I'd just like to reiterate what Wanda said, that together we can make a difference, and it's through our power of voting. AMEP is a party of its values, and therefore our power is that we need to listen to the people that we represent. And in my case, that's the people of South Australia. We don't have a party line that we're told how to vote, not like the big boys. And if you can take anything away from tonight, it is to remember that the power of preferencing is in your hands. The more numbers you place above the line for the minor parties and independents, the more your vote stays in the running. If you don't want your preference to go to the majors or Greens, you don't have to put a number in their box, because the power is with you. They are hoping that you won't do that, and that will annihilate the minor parties and independents from the Senate. The Senate is the House of Review. If there is not diversity in the House of Review, your voice is not being heard. So thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for playing.
I'd like to thank you for having us. I'd like to thank Peter for inviting me and Flag. When I looked at wanting to go into politics, I went on the websites and I looked at the policies. I looked at all the minor parties, I read through them, and I had a look to see which ones I agreed with. And there's only one party, which was One Nation, that I agreed with every single policy bar one, which I took a conscience vote. Sorry, I'm allowed a conscience vote. So what I'd ask you to do is, if you would please, have a look at our policies. Why? Because if One Nation is successful in the Senate, that's what you will hold us accountable with. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, or any of the other party members, hold us accountable. Hold us accountable, because we'll never perform unless we're held accountable. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. I'd just like to thank all of you for coming, and I know some of you have, thanks Lou. How many drinks have you had?
Not enough.
I thought you were bypassed. You get 2 minutes.
just like to say thank you very much to Flag Australia for inviting myself and everyone else here tonight, and thank you very much to, mostly important, to the public people, to all the public constituents that turned up here tonight. Thank you very much. That's, you know, because we can put on this plumbing and our stuff too, you know. So basically, thanks a lot for coming. And I'd like to say that Darren Hinch's Justice Party has a few sayings that go with it. We hear you, we're listening to you, and we're going to fight for you. That's one of their sayings, and that's up on their website, and that's what they profess to say and want to do. And furthermore, I counted about maybe 80 to maybe 90 people here, maybe roughly 100. For 20 years I fought child protection on the steps of Parliament with a megaphone. I ended up with, what, 30, 40 people after 20 years. So on the first or second night, you've got 100, so guess what? Well done so far. And finally, I would like to say that... Thank you, bro. Sorry about this, I apologise for that. Hang on.
Left-hand pocket.
Right. Lastly, but most importantly, please remember to... I can't remember the actual categories that was mentioned with voting, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way through the rest of them, whatever it is. But please remember, vote Liberal, Labor, the Greens last, and put everybody else first, because this country needs to be ruled by the people that are actually listening to the will of the people, because at the moment the federal and state governments have failed to listen to the will of the people. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Kai.
Just have a quick word.
A real quick one.
Yeah, can you hear me? I don't think in my 70-odd years of being a returned serviceman based in Marilinga and that sort of thing, I don't think there's ever been a more important election to vote out of the corner, because the two big ones, or three, want to corner you. And when you corner somebody, the dog will bite you. And I think it's really important now that people think through, look at the small parties, and be very wary of what they're voting for, because the future is looking pretty grim when the major party, like the present government, putting things off till after the election, like the Kidman property and many other things going off. So I think it's extremely, and it's really a great night to have all these people here, including Peter and his wife and all the people there. It's a great night. Thank you.
Thanks, well, just quickly, thank you all very much for coming. I know some of you have travelled a fair distance, and it's much appreciated, giving up your precious time and resources to be here. Again, thank you to Andrew Reimer and Liz McCaskill from 5AA. Andrew and Liz, Saturday, Sunday nights from 7 till 12. Give Andrew a call. Ask him a few questions. Voice your concerns. Let the people that are listening, there's a lot of people that don't ring in, but there's a lot of people out there listening. And the more people that ring in and voice your concerns, media monitoring, the politicians are watching and listening to everything. And I can tell you now, the more people that ring in and voice their opinion, and Andrew's great, he'll give you a bit of time, he won't cut you off, and he's got to go, he'll tell you, look, I've got to go. So it's a situation where give him a chance, and also if you're, look like you want a funeral or something like that, he's a good funeral celebrant. And he's a good marriage celebrant too, so give him a go. That's a hat trick there, Andrew. But no, look, thank you much again. And also, if you want to make a little donation in our donation tins, because we've got our costs, believe me, and the border flag. I can't thank you enough, Lou and Brian and Carl. I really mean it. And I'm not joking. This government, the opposition, are really watching Flag big time. They don't like us because we speak publicly and we tell the truth, believe me. And when you've got a situation where we import 90% of our liquid fuel, that is disgusting. Victoria in 2012 imported more food than it exported, and we are net food importers on seafood and fruit and veg. We are not in good shape, so we need change. We were the lucky country, we're not. We want to be the lucky country again. Do not vote Liberal, do not vote Labor, because the mess we're in, we've had those two parties in all these years. Give these independents a go. We can't be any worse off. So thank you again for coming. Thank you to all the candidates. thank you for being respectful. Bob lost it there for half a second, but you're all right, Bob. You're all right now?
We need to be more concerned about traitors and terrorists.
Good on you. And there's one thing, if any of these people do get in, you cannot be bought, because they want to get something on you, and when they got something on you, you're finished. So thanks again, all the best. Oh, look, hang on. Simon, the audio, thanks very much, Simon. Very, very sorry about your son. And thanks to Nick, our cameraman. And again, thanks to my lovely first wife, Mary. I really appreciate it.